By the end of 2011, Rocksteady Studios had released two largely successful and critically acclaimed Batman games, Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City. Still, they weren't done yet and had ambitious plans for a third game to really cap off their Arkham series. This game would later be known as Batman Arkham Knight. However, Rocksteady knew that in order to fully realize their plans for Arkham Knight, they'd need 3 years of development time, which would mean that there would be a long gap between Arkham City and Arkham Knight. Knowing this ahead of time, they informed parent company Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment to see how they wanted to approach this Arkham gap. Warner decided that the best approach would be to have another company take the reins on a separate Arkham game, while Rocksteady worked diligently on Arkham Knight. This brings us to WB Montreal, the team tasked with taking on this new Arkham game. WB Montreal was an unexpected choice though, because they were such a newly established studio, having only been founded by Warner Bros. Interactive in 2010. However, they did have some experience with the Arkham franchise, since their first project was to develop Rocksteady's Arkham City for the Wii U, titled Batman Arkham City Armored Edition. This edition was largely the same as the original Arkham City game, with some minor additions for the Wii U, such as a reimagined functionality of Batman's gadgets to utilize the Wii U gamepad. The experience developing Armored Edition was beneficial to WB Montreal because it gave them extra familiarity with Rocksteady's codebase, which also provided an easier transition into creating this new game. The decision was also made to have this new Arkham game be a prequel, which provided them with some additional creative liberties. This attracted creative director Eric Holmes to the project, and in the same interview he describes why he preferred the idea of a prequel over something taking place after Arkham City.
If you're at issue 600 of a comic, it's very hard to tell a new story. The challenge for us, coming in after Rocksteady, is to do something which hasn't been done, and do something which isn't a retread and isn't copy-paste of their game. It has to add value, it has to be new. To me, that's the key to that prequel, is that invigoration that it adds to things.
This new game would be titled Batman Arkham Origins, and WB Montreal were eager to tell their own Batman story set in the Arkham universe. Rocksteady was very supportive of WB Montreal's endeavors as well, giving them all of their code and assets from Batman Arkham City and Asylum. In an interview with Game Informer, Arkham Knight game director Sefton Hill explains what the handoff to WB Montreal was like. To be honest, mainly we said, make the game you want to make. We wanted them to be really passionate about the game they wanted to make. The main involvement was, take our code, make the best Arkham game that you can make. Sefton goes on to state that the only story limitations that were given to WB Montreal were that they were asked not to step on the toes of the Arkham Knight story. Rocksteady had that story outlined fairly early on and were able to provide it to WB Montreal, making sure that there wouldn't be any conflicts. Other than that, Rocksteady gave WB Montreal free reign over their story, and Sefton confirms that Rocksteady considers the story of Arkham Origins canon. Speaking of which, the story of Arkham Origins takes place 2 years into Bruce Wayne's career as Batman, roughly 8 years before the events of Batman Arkham Asylum. At this point in time, it's said that Batman has been establishing a name for himself in Gotham, but has really only had to deal with low-level crime like drug dealers and thieves. That all changes during the events of Arkham Origins though, when Black Mask puts a bounty worth $50 million on Batman's head, inviting some of the world's deadliest assassins to hunt him down. This is a whole new level of threat that Batman has never dealt with before, meaning he'll be facing noteworthy supercriminals for the first time in Origins, such as Bane, Deathstroke, and the Joker. This was an exciting premise, but fans still had some concerns, namely, how WB Montreal would handle the gameplay of the tried-and-true Rocksteady systems. Would they make a lot of changes, or hardly any at all? In an interview with the Girls on Games, Ben Mattis describes how they approached making changes to the core gameplay mechanics of the Arkham series, as well as adding new things of their own.
So, obviously you mentioned there is the content layer, right? The narrative and that sort of thing. But that's a given, as you said. We have that. We've talked a lot about that. The strategy we took in this game is if it's not broken, don't fix it model. So we did not say, oh, we're going to do a better fighting system than free flow combat, which by our biased opinion is an industry class hand-to-hand melee fighting system. But what we did do is we looked for special opportunities to what we do called move the needle, like invest in that one key area, those key gadgets, those key enemies that is going to make a significant impact on the player's experience.
Ben further goes on to state that they heavily invested in expanding the open world. The open world of Arkham Origins is over twice the size of Arkham City, featuring a new area, South Gotham, also called New Gotham, with Pioneer's Bridge connecting the two. They also added random events in the city, allowing you to stop crimes in progress as you roam around Gotham. One of the most noticeable differences though is the Christmas aesthetic of the game, since the story takes place entirely on Christmas Eve night. Gotham is full of snow and Christmas decorations, and creative director Eric Holmes tells Game Informer that a Christmas theme was chosen due to how the prettiness of Christmas contrasts with the ugliness of Gotham. Here's the quote. It's a beautiful thing in an ugly place. It adds an ironic humor to things without breaking the seriousness of the theme, which is really fun for us. The voice cast was also changed up for Arkham Origins, since WB Montreal wanted these characters to sound similar but younger compared to the voices we've heard in the other Arkham games. Most notably, Kevin Conroy has been subbed out for Roger Craig Smith as Batman, while Troy Baker takes over the role of Joker from Mark Hamill. Although Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are legendary voices of Batman and Joker respectively, I do think it was the right decision to bring in some new voices for this prequel. However, we'll discuss how these new actors did when we get to the audio section of the video. There were also some really incredible CG trailers released to promote the game. One in particular shows a fight between Batman and Deathstroke, and it's honestly my favorite CG trailer that I've ever seen for a game. It's pretty long, so I don't think I can show all of it, but I'll show the best part, the Deathstroke fight, during the chapter break for the gameplay section. Batman Arkham Origins released in October 2013 to PS3, Xbox 360, Wii U, and PC. For this video, I played the PC version of the game, which is where all the gameplay clips that you'll see came from. I should mention that I also played the game using a gamepad, specifically an Xbox One controller, so if you see any Xbox button prompts appear, that's why. Also, if you enjoy this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like since it helps the channel, and you can also subscribe if you'd like to see more retrospectives like this one. My goal for this video was to be as comprehensive as possible, and as I'm sure you've already noticed, this will be a much longer video, so kick back, relax, and let's start by delving into the story of Batman Arkham Origins. So the intro cutscene of this was actually getting copyright flags for the score, so I'll have to describe it a bit, which is a shame because it's actually a pretty badass cutscene. To start, it opens with a lot of frantic cuts as the bats run from Bruce as he enters the Batcave. I like this a lot since it immediately gives us a sense of fear associated with Bruce. We also get a lot of story background in this one cutscene as Bruce watches the news from the Batcomputer. The news states that Gotham is under a severe winter storm warning, urging the citizens to stay in their homes until everything is cleared. This provides a story reason as to why Gotham City is free of innocent bystanders, but full of criminals and corrupt cops. The news also announces the arrest of Julian Day, aka the Calendar Man, a killer whose murders are associated with various holidays. Calendar Man has been given the death penalty, with the execution date set for tonight, which is ironically Christmas Eve. Giving the announcement is Gotham's Commissioner Loeb, not James Gordon. This is so early on in Batman's career that Gordon hasn't even become commissioner yet, and currently holds the rank captain. Gordon does respond on the news regarding Batman though, denying his existence. Batman is seen as more of a mythological figure at this point, with Gotham unsure if he's good, bad, human, or if he even exists. We next get news of a breakout at Blackgate Prison, led by Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask. Black Mask has reportedly taken Commissioner Loeb hostage, so it's up to Batman to rescue him. We get the suit-up sequence as Bruce goes into Batman mode, and we take the Batwing to Blackgate Prison to stop the riots and save Commissioner Loeb. As soon as we enter the prison, we rescue Warden Joseph from one of Black Mask's thugs. Understandably terrified by this whole ordeal, he panics and takes a swing at us too. Once he calms down, he points us in the direction of Black Mask. If we talk to him more, we'll find out that he was complicit to a degree with this breakout. Apparently, Black Mask threatened his family, requesting that he clear his men out of one of the wings in Blackgate. Out of fear, the warden obliged. We'll later see a clip of this, which indicates how he lost his eye. As we continue through the prison, we spot a random drone flying through, but we don't know who it belongs to yet. We also come across news reporter Vicky Vale and need to save her from some of Black Mask's thugs, one of our first combat encounters in the game. Regarding the combat, it's pretty much the same as the other Arkham games. You'll have your basic attack button causing Batman to strike enemies, and you have a counter button that you'll press right before the enemy attacks you, as indicated by the glowing lines above their heads. Stringing together combos is important since you'll get progressively faster and gain the ability to take an enemy down immediately once you reach a combo of 5 or higher based on the skills that you've unlocked. You're also incentivized not to button mash, since improperly timing attacks will often reset your combo counter back to 0, hindering your effectiveness. It's a relatively simple system, but it's fast-paced and tests your reflexes, which makes it a lot of fun. Eventually, we encounter Black Mask as he parades Commissioner Loeb through the prison and towards the execution chamber. With the meta-knowledge that one day Gordon will become commissioner, it's safe to say things aren't looking too good for Loeb right now. Along with them is Killer Croc, and this is Batman's first encounter with him. Croc appears to be the muscle of the breakout, brute-forcing his way through the prison. As we continue our pursuit, we have to make our way through Calendar Man's cell, which has a couple interesting details. There are of course a ton of calendars scattered within it, but Julian has also etched a to-do list into the wall. The top one with a big circle around it is Judge Harkness. In the audio files, we learn that Harkness was highly against Julian pleading insanity for the trial. He wanted Julian tried as a sane man so he could give him the death penalty. It was also Judge Harkness who decided on Christmas Eve as the execution date, calling it poetic justice, so this is likely why he's on Calendar Man's hit list. We can also see a note on the wall that reads, "Happy Holidays, Julian," with the initials HQ. I believe this is a note from Harleen Quinzel, who we'll later know as Joker's girlfriend, Harley Quinn. She hasn't gone full clown princess at this point in time, and is instead a psychiatric intern at Blackgate. She was tasked with giving the initial psychological evaluation of Calendar Man, who she deemed insane. However, at the behest of the judge, Warden Joseph ordered her to re-evaluate him, but this time mark him as sane. If she didn't, he threatened to fire her. She reluctantly agreed, but managed to talk her way into evaluating all new criminals as they enter the prison, which will be important later. There's also another audio file where she's calling a patient on behalf of the office of psychiatrist Dr. Hugo Strange, a villain we'll become very familiar with in Batman Arkham City. Furthermore, we can even find Strange's office called Strange Minds, as well as a poster for his self-help seminars. Continuing through the prison though, we eventually make it to the execution chamber as Black Mask frees Calendar Man and replaces him with Commissioner Loeb. Before Batman can make it into the room, they flip the gas chamber on and Loeb is killed. Even though Loeb was an extremely corrupt cop, Batman is pissed that Black Mask murdered someone and continues to pursue him. Along the way, we come across that drone from earlier, smashed by Killer Croc. Batman removes the memory card for future analysis and continues to the roof of the prison. By the time we catch up, Black Mask and his men have already boarded the helicopter and made their escape. However, Killer Croc has an enhanced sense of smell and was able to tell that we were nearby, so he waits to handle us himself, leading into our first boss fight of the game. Croc is incredibly quick and powerful, so we can't beat him head on. Instead, we'll use our cape to stun him, and then pummel him while he's dazed. After a while, he'll pick up an explosive canister to throw at us, but if we launch a batarang at it, it'll explode on him instead. Croc will also occasionally grab us and attempt to bite our head off, which is really terrifying. I feel bad about this, but I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't push him off, and you can rest easy knowing that he doesn't successfully bite your head off. Instead, Batman uses his gauntlet as a defense. For first boss fight though, Croc is pretty solid. He tests your basic combat skills and also requires you to use your quick-fire batarangs, which will be handy in later fights as well. He's challenging without being too overwhelming, and I think he was a good introductory battle. But after doing enough damage to Croc, we get the upper hand and interrogate him for info on Black Mask. Instead, Croc reveals that Mask put a bounty on Batman's head, calling in different assassins to kill the Bat for a cash prize. Gordon shows up, attempting to arrest Batman and Croc, but Batman manages to escape into the Batwing, leaving Croc to be apprehended by the police. We then return back to the Batcave to analyze the memory card from that drone, and learn that it's been spending a lot of time spying on Black Mask recently, giving us info on the bounty as well as the specific assassins that are after us.
The best in the business. Black Mask isn't messing around. Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, former military, subject of a failed medical experiment.
Failed, you say?
Garfield Linz, aka Firefly, burns on 90% of his body. His obsession is going to be his end.
How unlike anyone I know.
Here's a face I don't recognize. Copperhead. Strange. These reports reference a male, not a female.
14 escapes, huh? Well, you won't forget nada. What the?
Floyd Lawton, aka Deadshot.
Freeze!
Says here he's an expert sharpshooter.
How on earth?
Suspected of many assassinations. Dangerous, but reckless. Street tough named Lester Baczynski. Calls himself Electrocutioner.
Shocking.
Shiva. Her skill is unmatched.
For this!
Bane, here in Gotham. Why would he be taking money as a hired killer?
There are a couple details that I thought were interesting during this cutscene as well. The first is that WB Montreal used a location from Arkham City for Deathstroke's introduction, the museum where we face Penguin. Batman also mentions the records for Copperhead reference a male, which is a sly nod to the fact that Copperhead was a male in the comics. While we're in the Batcave, we can take a moment to explore and see what Batman's been up to. One of my favorite details is Batman's crime board. The first column of investigation seems to be based on the various crime families in Gotham, specifically the Falcones and the Maronis, who are often going to war with each other. There's a post-it note reading, "Case closed, Maroni," so it seems a trial is in motion for the Maronis at least. As far as the Falcones, we won't see much of them in the game, but we will see Alberto Falcone a bit later on, son of crime lord Carmine Falcone. The third column on the board is for Calendar Man, which was kind of resolved up until Black Mask set him free. Lastly is the middle column focusing on the Red Hood gang. This is separate from the future character Red Hood, who we won't see until Batman Arkham Knight. Instead, this is a gang whose leader is often seen wearing a red helmet and a red cape. We'll talk about this one a lot more as we get deeper into the story though, so keep that in mind. Also in the Batcave is an incomplete Batmobile with blueprints and parts around it. We'll later see this same Batmobile completed at the beginning of Arkham Asylum. There's also a workshop where we'll pick up new gadgets, and we can see that Bruce is working on building the Line Launcher, a gadget we'll have access to in the later games. There's also a medical center and a training area in the Batcave, and it's really cool being able to roam around the cave and explore. I also like how you can pop in and have conversations with Alfred occasionally too. I feel bad for him though. He'll often mention how he's concerned for Bruce and how he wishes he could just stay home so they could have Christmas dinner and open gifts together. He'll also occasionally mention how he's being harassed by a giant bat in the cave, who he calls King Bat.
I've seen a rather large bat in the cave, sir. Do take care not to anger it.
I wasn't planning to.
Good. With everything occurring tonight, the last thing we need is a pest problem.
I'm sure it's harmless, Alfred.
You haven't seen the creature.
This is likely the bat we saw during that opening cutscene. But despite Alfred's wishes that we stay home, we continue our investigation into Black Mask, this time heading to Jezebel Plaza, the location where the drone was meant to return after spying on Black Mask. When we get to Jezebel Plaza, we discover an arms deal going down, led by Penguin's crew. Batman wants to question Penguin about what he knows, and decides that the leader of this arms deal is the best one to interrogate. That's this guy with the Santa hat, Ricky Loose Lips LeBlanc. After taking out the rest of his crew, Batman takes a crack at interrogating him.
Get away!
Where's the Penguin?
I don't know.
Where is he?
I swear.
Damn.
Batman goes a little too hard here and accidentally causes Ricky to pass out. This is a good example of how WB Montreal tried to show Batman as more of a novice at the vigilante thing. In an interview with Game Reactor, Ben Mattis describes how they approached Batman making mistakes early in his career. It's not cool to trip over your cape. It's not cool to get stabbed in the leg when you're trying to save someone. That's not a heroic, empowering Batman. We like to say when our character makes mistakes, they're awesome mistakes. This is definitely an awesome mistake, since Batman was a little too badass in that moment, but he still has to find a way to make Ricky talk. When Ricky finally wakes up, he's in for an even worse interrogation than before.
Wake up. What happened?
Time to talk. Where's Cobblepot?
Let me go!
If you insist.
As he's dangling from the building, Ricky's phone starts to go off, and it's a message from the Penguin. Ricky is willing to talk now, but Batman no longer needs him, since he can just trace Penguin's location from the SIM card. Instead of reeling Ricky back up, he just drops him onto the Christmas tree below, which I think is hilarious. Also, I just want to mention how incredible some of these shots are in these cutscenes. They really did an excellent job of lining up the perfect angles, and I especially love how Batman looks with the moon as a backdrop. He really does look terrifying. In one of the behind-the-scenes videos, we get a glimpse of how these cutscenes were directed, and they used a device that operates as a virtual camera, which was really interesting.
We're using all in-game assets for sure, and we're filming them with a virtual camera. So it's like a joystick with a screen, and the screen shows me what I see in the virtual world. So if I move around, it's like being in that world. It's giving us a bit of that handheld feeling, so it's giving us some realism.
Now that we have Penguin's signal, we're able to track him to an old cruise ship that's been transformed into a hideout. Upon arrival, there's a pretty cool Easter egg on the wall, a flyer for a psychological study conducted by Jonathan Crane. Crane later becomes the villain Scarecrow, but starts off as a psychologist interested in the way the brain processes fear. His study is likely on this topic and foreshadows his eventual rise to villainy. Inside the final offer, we learn this is also the same night that Penguin is conducting a fighting arena on the boiler deck, with the winner getting a chance to go up against his prizefighter, the Electrocutioner, one of the 8 assassins tasked with killing Batman. Batman drops in on the boiler deck, and Electrocutioner comes out to handle him.
to save you a lot of trouble coming here, Batman. I'm gonna kill you. Then I'm gonna jumpstart your heart. And kill you again.
He's set up to be our next boss fight, and he's ready to rumble. He's incredibly arrogant, but it turns out that he's all bark, no bite, and Batman takes him out with one hit.
Who wants to show me where the Penguin is?
I thought this was pretty funny, and I like how they even gave him a full health bar as he entered the arena. It reminded me a lot of the Mysterio fight from Spider-Man 2, the way the player is made to think that this will be an intense fight, only for it to end as soon as you press the attack button. But with Electrocutioner down, Penguin's right-hand woman Tracy tells all the henchmen to rush Batman and take him down. After taking them all out, we can continue our hunt for Penguin. As we progress through the ship, Tracy sends us a message over the intercom telling us that Electrocutioner has woken up and escaped. This is another mistake on Batman's end, and he acknowledges that he should have tied him up and sent the cops to retrieve him. However, in the theme of Batman making awesome mistakes, he's able to turn this negative into a positive by having Alfred scan the city for energy signatures matching Electrocutioner's gloves. While Alfred gets to work on that, we continue to pursue Penguin. Continuing through the ship, we also find an Easter egg based on this replica. Penguin's voiceover of the ship mentions that it was at one point called the Olivia B. Meredith, which is a nod to the 1960s Batman show, where the actor portraying Penguin was named Oliver Burgess Meredith. We can also enter Penguin's office, which has a few other Easter eggs within it. First, in one of the cases, we can see a bunch of umbrellas, which is his trademark weapon. In the comics, Penguin has umbrellas that conceal various weapons, usually a gun, but sometimes a knockout gas or some kind of propeller he can use to fly. We can also find a newspaper on the wall stating that Gotham is now the second most dangerous city, which makes me nervous for whatever city is the first. We can also find blueprints for the Iceberg Lounge, which will end up being Penguin's new base of operations later on. There's also a list of planned hijackings, naming 3 noteworthy companies. There's Amertech, which used to employ the character John Henry Irons, who later becomes the hero Steel. If that sounds familiar, you might recognize him from his unfortunate movie where he's played by Shaq. There's also LexCorp, the company owned by Superman nemesis Lex Luthor. Last on the list is Queen Industries, owned by Oliver Queen, aka the Green Arrow. Next to this list is another one for weapon orders from the various assassins in Gotham, like Deathstroke and Deadshot. Bane even has his own special box down below, full of rockets and rocket launchers, something we'll see him using later in the story. Eventually, we track down Penguin as he tortures Alberto Falcone. Penguin's goal is to convince Alberto to talk his father into leaving the weapons business, leaving it open for Penguin to take over. Batman interrupts and starts to beat on Penguin for information about Black Mask. He's successful as Penguin tells him to investigate Lacey Towers, Black Mask's penthouse hideaway. Before he can tell us more, we're interrupted by another assassin, Deathstroke. This brings us back into the fighting pit against an extremely skilled opponent. Deathstroke is a weapons expert and highly skilled martial artist. Batman is as well, but Deathstroke matches his skill, making him a major threat, and he's commonly considered to be one of the deadliest assassins in the DC universe. So this is going to be a big step up from the enemies we faced prior to this. This is also potentially my favorite boss fight in the game, since it feels like a really tense one-on-one battle. You won't do well button mashing against Deathstroke, since he can block your attacks and take advantage of any openings you give him. Even with the attack indicators over his head, you still need to stay on your toes as he'll attack quickly, often multiple times. The fight itself is pretty straightforward, attack when you can and counter his strikes, but it's a fairly long battle and too many errors can be your downfall. As the fight progresses, he'll become more aggressive and attack more frequently. Eventually, Batman will break his staff and he'll pull out a sword, giving him new attack animations that you'll have to adapt to. I love this though because both of them feel evenly matched and it feels like you really have to focus during this entire fight. I think WB Montreal really nailed the feeling of a Deathstroke boss battle, and I go so far as to say that it's one of the best boss fights in the entire Arkham series, not even just from Origins. By the way, just a fun detail about Deathstroke is that he was the inspiration for Marvel's Deadpool. Deathstroke was introduced to comics first, nearly a decade before Marvel would use him as the baseline for Deadpool. Both are skilled mercenaries, and you can see similarities in their costumes. Marvel didn't even play coy about it, naming their character's alter ego nearly the same thing as DC's. Deathstroke is Slade Wilson, while Deadpool is Wade Wilson. But anyway, after finally taking down Deathstroke, Batman takes one of his gadgets for himself, the Remote Claw, a unique gadget to this game, although it has similar components to the Line Launcher. Meanwhile, Penguin has taken advantage of Deathstroke's unintentional distraction, reaching higher ground to taunt us before heading inside his locked room with the ladies. We can't get to Penguin now, but we can still use the lead he gave us earlier, which was to investigate Black Mask's hideout in Lacey Towers. When we arrive, we see that it's a murder crime scene. There's a woman hanging from a chandelier, and a dead body on the floor who appears to be Black Mask. Using our detective vision, we can scan the room for evidence to start to piece together what happened. We also find the woman's phone, showing text between her and Roman Sionis, where she's worried about someone named the Joker. At this point in time, Batman hasn't encountered the Joker, so he's unsure of who that is. After analyzing the rest of the clues, Batman is able to get a decent idea of what went down at the crime scene, but needs to access the Gotham City Police Department's criminal database system in order to run some DNA samples. This means we'll have to break into the GCPD and access their server room to complete our investigation. That's where we head next, and begin our infiltration of the police department. Even though these are all police officers, Batman shows no mercy in taking them down. Alfred is clearly distressed by this, asking him to take it easy on them since they're just city employees. Batman declines, stating that they're all incredibly corrupt and in his way. In a lot of superhero games, you won't beat up cops, but in this game, they're one of your main enemy types. The game goes to a lot of effort to prove that the Gotham City police force is incredibly corrupt and violent though, everyone except for Gordon. Just in these next couple rooms, we'll see cops beating up on the homeless, and large bloodstains in the interrogation rooms, just a couple small examples of how cruel this police force can be. To further emphasize that the police are Batman's enemy, we'll overhear a meeting where corrupt SWAT leader Brandon informs his men that he's struck a deal with Black Mask to include them on the bounty for Batman's head. If any of them kill the Bat, they'll all split the $50 million. So Batman has no friends on this police force. While we're in this room though, Batman says to himself that he won't stand a chance against this many armed men, and that we should sneak past them. I wanted to test that out though, since I was curious to see if there were any Easter eggs for beating them all up. It was tough, but I was actually able to do it. Unfortunately, nothing happens if you do, but it was still fun though. Nevertheless, our journey through the GCPD brings us into contact with our old friend Loose Lips again. By the way, that is not a nickname you want in prison. Anyway, Loose Lips is under interrogation and reveals that the cops have locked up a gadget of his, an electronic disruptor. Batman decides to interrogate him again to learn more about the device, and we take a detour to evidence lockup to retrieve it. Along the way, we also overhear an argument between Gordon and his daughter Barbara. It seems that Barbara believes that Batman is an ally and what he's doing is justified. Gordon disagrees. Barbara storms off and Gordon follows her. We can actually then investigate his office, but there's not a lot of interesting details in it. There are criminal boards of the people Gordon is hunting, as well as his degree from Chicago Green University. I never knew his middle name was Worthington though. There's also a photo on his desk of who I believe to be his wife, Barbara Keene, since that looks to be red hair to me. However, Barbara Keene and James eventually get a divorce in the comics, and he later remarries a woman named Sarah Essen. So it's possible that it's actually Sarah in this photo and not Barbara, but I couldn't find any confirmation either way. Eventually, we make it to the evidence lockup and retrieve the disruptor to help us continue through the precinct. As we're leaving though, a huge riot has begun in the holding cells not far from us. We immediately jump in and take down the rioting convicts, containing the riot before it's able to spread through the building. We weren't quite fast enough though, since it seems one cop was severely wounded and paramedics are attempting to defibrillate him back to life. Playing through this the first time, I thought it was odd how the paramedics were here and seemingly given a spotlight by the game for no reason. You can't interact with them, and they pay no mind to the giant bat running through the hall, but the seemingly inconsequential moment is actually setting something up in the future, so more on that later. But now that we have the disruptor, we can enter the server room and gain access to the National Criminal Database. To our surprise, Gordon's daughter is also in the server room, and we have a brief interaction with her. She points us to the server that will gain us access to the database, and she shows a lot of interest in Batman's tech. We also learn that she's very tech-savvy with advanced hacking knowledge. If you're unfamiliar with the character, Barbara Gordon later becomes the heroine Batgirl, and also has a stint as Batman's tech expert at the Batcave, going by the codename Oracle. Unfortunately, our interaction with her is cut short as Brandon and his men shoot a gas canister into the room to weaken the bat. Barbara rushes over to cover for us and buys us enough time to escape. As we're leaving, we can hear Brandon communicating over the walkie with one of his men, arguing over whether Batman has a gun on him. This could be a slight reference to the early days of Batman comics, where he actually did carry a gun. It wasn't until later that DC decided that it was best to remove that from his arsenal. As we're leaving the GCPD via elevator, we inadvertently run into Gordon.
I don't want to hurt you, but you need to stay out of my way.
Never.
Listen, I'm on your side.
My side? My side works within the law. My side doesn't leave suspects with broken bones and missing teeth. We've earned Gotham's respect.
If that were true, I wouldn't believe you.
Gordon, clear the line of fire! Hold your fire! If he moves, take him down. You've got nowhere to run. Move, Gordon! I'm taking him down!
We take out Brandon and his men, but Gordon was incapacitated from when we threw him against the wall. We'll have to leave him there for now and continue our investigation of the murder scene. With access to the criminal database, Batman is able to solve the murder.
Someone spooked Sionis' girlfriend, so he sent her to his safe house, which was anything but safe. Sionis showed up later, ready for trouble, and found it. Or so it seemed. Roman's always been paranoid. That's probably why he's lasted this long. He'd sent in a decoy, giving himself the element of surprise, but it wasn't enough. There was a fight. Sionis lost. The killer didn't hesitate to shoot the decoy, but he wanted Roman alive to access the cash stored at the Gotham Merchants Bank. With Sionis under control, all that remained was to tie up loose ends. But it wasn't the fire that killed Sionis' girlfriend. What kind of a monster forces a man to kill the ones he loves? The Joker. He's the shadow I've been chasing. And now I know where he's going next. Gotham Merchants Bank.
With the murder solved, we next head to Gotham Merchants Bank in hopes of thwarting the Joker's heist and rescue Roman Sionis. By the time we arrive though, Joker has already done a ton of damage, killing all of the guards and some of Black Mask's men, displaying them all around the bank. A few of them also have a TV smashed over their heads, calling back to a similar gag Joker used in the Arkham Asylum game. I also like how on this desk you can see some magazines from the Gotham Informer, which I think is based on the real-life National Enquirer, with inflammatory headlines meant to get you to impulse buy them. One references Bruce Wayne being drunk and out of control, while the other mentions that Gotham will be receiving 400 inches of snow. There's also a subheadline about a crocodile in the Gotham sewers, which is a reference to Killer Croc. Even though Joker has caused a lot of destruction here, it seems he hasn't left the building yet, so we decide to drop in for the big reveal.
Think you can just waltz into my bank, huh?
Roman, I'm here for the Joker.
The Joker? Never heard of him. How about you, dog? Know the Joker?
The who?
And you, sir? Name Joker ring a bell? You son of a bitch! You think you can steal from me? I got away with it? You're a dead man. Dead! Can't you just play along?
You're insane!
It's been you this whole time. You hired the assassins. You've been running Sionis' operation.
Well, technically it's my operation now. Isn't that right, boys?
You got me. Now let her go.
Oh, life would be so simple if you were all I wanted. No, you're just a teeny little distraction compared to what I've got up my sleeve. Here, have a laugh on me. You hear that? Sounds like 8 tiny reindeer.
So let's talk about this reveal for a moment, because I know there are a lot of different opinions on it, and I personally feel split on it myself. On the one hand, I see why WB Montreal would have Joker impersonating Black Mask most of the game. It sounds like a very Joker thing to do, and it quickly gives him access to a lot of money and henchmen. However, it comes off feeling very lackluster, and I think there are a couple reasons why. Firstly, I think in general, twists involving a character taking off a mask and it turns out it was someone else the entire time rarely feel earned. It feels like an easy twist for some quick shock factor. Secondly, my other problem is more on a meta level, and it's the fact that it's Joker yet again. At this point in time, it felt like the Joker was the lead villain for everything Batman, including the last 2 Arkham games. When Arkham Origins was announced, it was exciting to hear that a new villain would be receiving the spotlight, especially a more obscure character like Black Mask. This would give WB Montreal the opportunity to provide some fresh character development and background to an underutilized character in the Arkham series, and introduce Black Mask to new fans that have likely never heard of him. When this reveal occurs and you learn that it was Joker all along, that strips all the character development away from Black Mask and gives it to a character that has been arguably overused throughout recent years. So on those 2 fronts, it feels like a disappointing reveal for me. Since this is an origin story though, I know it's inevitable that the Joker has to be introduced since he's such a prominent figure in the later games, but I think he could have taken a bit of a backseat in favor of a different villain, at least for the first half of the game. Also, I hope I'm not coming off as a Joker hater. I actually really love the character and enjoy seeing him pop up in various games, movies, and comics, but I like a lot of other Batman villains too, so I would have liked to have seen the Joker introduced here in a way that didn't detract from another villain. However, I do still appreciate that WB Montreal took a few steps to tease up this fake-out. For example, as you're cruising through Gotham early on in the game, some thugs will mention how Black Mask has been acting differently lately and joking around more. More subtly, they even gave Black Mask different eye colors based on when he's the Joker. In the character files, it lists Joker as having green eyes and Roman Sionis brown eyes. When Joker is Black Mask, we can see he does in fact have green eyes. Additionally, I think they had Troy Baker voice Black Mask during the scenes where it's actually Joker under the mask. Brian Bloom is credited as voicing Black Mask, but I think that's specifically for Roman Sionis, since the voices do sound slightly different, with Sionis sounding more gruff.
And you, sir? Name Joker ring a bell? You son of a bitch! You think you can steal from me? Got away with it? You're a dead man. Dead!
I couldn't confirm that Troy voiced these scenes, but it sounds different enough to me, and Troy Baker definitely has the range to pull it off. I bring this up because I definitely feel more cheated if they had a separate voice actor playing Black Mask during scenes where it's supposed to be Joker, so I'm glad they didn't go that route. Continuing on though, Joker is now officially the main villain from here on out, and we have to hunt him down. Batman wakes up to a truly horrific sight as we learn that the bank manager injected with Joker toxin is dead. To make matters worse, Joker has sent more of his henchmen to double check that we're dead as well. We take them out, but save one for last to interrogate him on Joker's whereabouts. He tells us that Joker has taken over Sionis' steel mill and is using it as a hideout. Batman presumes Joker is likely to kill Sionis at that location, so we head there next. Once inside the steel mill, we can find folders for some of the rejected assassins that Joker considered for the bounty. There's David Kane, a master assassin that actually helped to train young Bruce Wayne for a time. David also had a child with Shiva, one of the assassins that was approved to hunt us. The child is Cassandra Cain, who has held the mantle of Batgirl in the comics. There's also Cheshire. She's often a rival of the Teen Titans, but ended up falling for one of its members and having a child with him. That Teen Titan member was Roy Harper, also known as Arsenal. The last assassin is Black Spider, who sees himself more as a vigilante, often targeting the drug trade. Unlike Batman though, Black Spider is willing to kill to achieve his goals, which regularly pits them against each other. I don't think it's ever stated why these assassins were rejected by the Joker, but I have to imagine it's because Joker might have viewed their backgrounds as unreliable, making him unsure that they wouldn't just switch sides and team up with Batman, but that's just my own guess. As we infiltrate the steel mill, we notice some of the henchmen using a hidden door to a concealed room. We break our way in and come across a Joker thug screaming for help, only to then die in an elevator. After scanning his body, we learn that he was poisoned somehow prior to entering the elevator. That's certainly strange, but we have to continue our hunt for Joker and Sionis. After taking the elevator down, we discover a hidden drug lab where Sionis is being held captive. Inside one of the rooms, we find Sionis chained up. After freeing him, Batman interrogates him, but still hasn't learned to mind his surroundings, allowing another assassin to sneak up on him mid-interrogation. This time it's Copperhead, an incredibly flexible and poisonous assassin. During a behind-the-scenes video, we're given some insight into how Copperhead's motion capture was accomplished, and the team needed 2 different specialized performers just for this one character.
So it quickly became evident that with the kind of skills that were necessary, we really needed 2 different stunt performers, specialists in their field.
One was more of a circus performer, because we needed her to be contortionists and move in a really slinky, sexy way. And then when it came for the fighting, we went with a stunt actress that specializes in fighting.
Action! We We used a combination of various things, including some acrobatics and some capoeira-like moves. And as soon as that goes, let that teeter-totter you straight into the handstand. It'll look really good.
Okay, good.
And with a bit of assistance with wires and stuff, she made these amazing moves, which were quite brutal.
It's really interesting seeing how they were able to bring Copperhead to life, and it's even more interesting seeing these actors perform these intricate moves for the game in real life. Going back to the game itself though, Copperhead gets the upper hand on Batman for a moment, poisoning him the same way that the thug was poisoned in the elevator. Copperhead retreats to the rafters again, assuming we're a dead man walking. We scan the room for any remnants of the neurotoxin, and send our analysis to Alfred so he can immediately develop an antidote. In the meantime, Bruce tries to muster enough strength to reach the main level again. Along the way, he starts to experience hallucinations, personifying his internal turmoil and guilt, kind of reminiscent of the Scarecrow levels in Arkham Asylum. One hallucination is of Alfred telling Bruce how his family would be disappointed if they could see him now, and how he's only a spoiled brat with too much money. Another is how he failed to save Commissioner Loeb from the gas chamber. The last, and certainly most creepy one, is of the bank manager.
Let me die. How many more must perish before you realize? Savior, you're a curse upon this city, a plague on all of Gotham. Leave us alone! We were better off without you. I'd still be alive without you.
As we make our way to the exit, Copperhead returns to stop us, but we're still hallucinating and see multiple versions of her at once. This leads to our boss fight against her, as we have to fight off all the hallucinations of her as well as the real version. She's not too difficult compared to the other swarms of enemies we faced before, and we mostly have to outlast her until Alfred is able to send in the antidote. Once we have that, we're easily able to handle Copperhead and subdue her. To keep her contained, Batman ties her up and throws her inside the back of a truck. As a last-ditch effort to earn her escape, she decides to give up the Joker's location. She mentions that all of the assassins are meeting tonight, and that she knows the location. Unfortunately for her, that's enough info for Batman, so he locks her up anyway. If all of the assassins will be meeting tonight with Joker, then Batman can track the energy signal of Electrocutioner's gloves to pinpoint the location of the meeting. This brings us to the Gotham Royal Hotel, and it seems the meeting is occurring on one of the higher floors. However, we'll need to break in from the basement and work our way up. Eventually, we make our way into the security room and watch their meeting take place.
Friends, assassins, welcome to our first quarterly performance review. As you can see here, Batman deaths are coming in far below projections. We are really gonna have to turn this around.
And by we, I mean you. Got that, Mr. Cutioner? Just who the hell are you? I'm the guy with the money. And the gun. So, when I hire you to kill the Batman, you shut the hell up and kill the Batman! So do you have anything else to contribute?
I didn't think so.
This fruitcake is fantastic! Anyone want a piece? All right, meeting's adjourned. Get out there and kill the bat. Move it along, big boy.
No, he's coming for you now. And when he gets here, I'm going to kill him. So you wait.
Well, should be interesting.
Electrocutioner really feels like the Taserface of Arkham Origins, extremely arrogant but seen as a joke. Every time he shows up, he gets one-shotted by someone too. He's legit dead now as well. But waste not, want not, Batman takes Electrocutioner's gloves and applies them to his gauntlets. This allows us to power up certain terminals, gaining access to previously inaccessible locations. In this case, we power up the lift to get us within range of an open window to the hotel. Eventually, we make it to the hotel's ballroom that Joker has converted into his own makeshift amusement park. Over the intercom, Joker describes how he acquired all of the equipment for it.
Where did I get all of this, you ask? Well, I got a great deal on an out-of-service amusement park. Oh, you should have seen the look on the real estate agent's face when we shook hands on the deal.
This is likely a reference to the Killing Joke graphic novel, a story we'll be referencing a few times in this video. In that story, Joker meets up with a guy selling an amusement park and tells him he'll buy it for more than it's worth. As they shake hands on the deal, it's revealed that Joker attached a device to the palm of his hand, pricking the seller and transmitting Joker toxin into him. The last we see of the seller, he's dead with that classic Joker grin. Also in this area, we can see a poster for a cancelled show at the circus, starring the Flying Graysons and their trapeze act. This is in reference to the Flying Graysons in the comics, a family who perform death-defying trapeze acts. One of the family members is Dick Grayson, the sole survivor after his parents were murdered, leaving him orphaned and later adopted by Bruce Wayne. Dick Grayson later becomes Robin, until he decides to rebrand himself as Nightwing. The rest of Joker's mini amusement park contain his own twisted carnival games, where different thugs' lives hang in the balance. For example, popping balloons in the proper sequence to prevent this henchman from being electrocuted to death. After successfully completing his different trials and beating up more thugs, we make it out of Joker's carnival and continue through the hotel. Once we make it to the top, we find an area littered with explosives that Joker rigs to explode in a matter of seconds, meaning we'll have to dive out the window to survive. Arkham City has a very similar setup where you have to dive out a window before being blown up by the Joker, but in that one, if you wait past the countdown, you get some additional Easter egg voice lines from the Joker. I thought maybe it was the same case here, but no, you just die. I guess that makes thematic sense though, because the Joker isn't infatuated with Batman yet and doesn't care if he dies, where in Arkham City, Joker has a different relationship towards him and is more playful in a way. But after we actually dive through the window, we hitch a ride to a news helicopter housing Vicky Vale as she reports the crime in progress. As we approach the building, you can also see two statues referencing the Court of Owls villain group from the comics, specifically Talons, a group of assassins that serve the court. On the rooftop are also a bunch of criminals, so we jump off to face them while Vicky's news helicopter records the whole thing. This leads to a brief sequence where we control Batman through the perspective of the news cameras, which I thought was pretty cool. It was also so seamless that I didn't even realize the cutscene had ended and that I was back in control. This is also the first time that Batman has been caught on camera and broadcast to the public, meaning that the world will now know that Batman is in fact real. Vicky Vale eventually leaves, and we're left to the rest of these henchmen. After taking them out, we continue through more of the hotel, at which point Alfred radios in, concerned for Bruce.
Sir, I've just seen the explosion of the Gotham Royal on the news. The hotel guests, are they safe?
Not now, Alfred.
Sir, are you all right? Your voice...
I'm fine, Alfred. I've dealt with psychopaths before, but this...
Sir, I strongly suggest you call in Captain Gordon. He could be a valuable ally for you.
I don't need any allies.
Throughout this game, Bruce will often be really rude and unappreciative of Alfred, and this is another example. Bruce also has it in his head that he has to do everything alone, and either out of stubbornness or arrogance, he refuses the need for additional allies, a mindset that Alfred is getting increasingly tired of. In the next room, we stealthily take out more of Joker's men, and then enter the elevator to the penthouse, the location where Joker is waiting with Bane. Batman knows that they'll immediately check the elevator when it arrives, so he cleverly decides to hide on top of it instead, so that he can easily sneak up on whoever— oh shit!
Nice of you to drop in. And just in time.
He's mine, Payaso!
Remember, you gave your word.
You have 1 minute.
Do they even have manners where he comes from? You see, it's a tradition in my house to open one present each on Christmas Eve. How about this one?
How many lives did you just take?
None, I think. That was just a little stocking stuffer. A construction site blocking my view. But this one isn't.
I've long waited for this moment. With your death, I will find peace.
Now that we're on to the fight against Bane, I want to take a brief moment to discuss him because I think WB Montreal really excelled with his portrayal. In the last cutscene alone, they demonstrate just how imposing he is both physically and mentally. I think it was clever to have him yank Batman down from the elevator, showing that Batman can't easily outsmart him, and the sound effects of Bane's punches land with a thunderous weight that always makes me wince. He's really scary in this game with not only his intimidating size and strength, but also intellect to match, and I always prefer smart Bane compared to the dumb brute we often get. Bane is legitimately both smart and strong in the comics, with his main weakness being the drug Venom that he takes to increase his strength. This is why he has those green cables attached to him, since they're pumping the Venom directly into his body. Although this drug gives him immense strength, Bane is highly dependent on it and it can offer debilitating side effects, as we'll see later in the game. For now though, Bane is a challenging fight. We'll start off fighting in this hotel room until Bane launches us out the window back onto the balcony. Alfred is nervous for Bruce and decides to call Gordon for backup against his wishes. Until Gordon arrives, we have to hold off Bane and attempt to take him down, but that's a lot easier said than done. He's hopped up on Venom and is incredibly strong, allowing him to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. His ability to charge at us is also a lot harder to dodge this time compared to when he does it in Arkham Asylum. In that game, you can just dodge and let him run into the walls. Here, he won't run into the walls and has a great turn radius, so he can chase you down very rapidly. You also can't vault over him, or else you'll take damage, so he can be tricky to avoid. His character model is also incredibly creepy, and I felt legitimately scared of him during this fight. I think it's the giant mouth with the exposed teeth that look unnatural, as well as the glowing green eyes. He's legit terrifying and I love it. He's scary like this in the comics too, with Bruce appearing visually worried to face him in the Nightfall comics, so I'm glad this game was able to emulate that feeling for me. In order to beat him though, we have to dodge his attacks and perform takedowns to strip the tubes from his back. The shock gloves also give us an edge, since we can attack him more directly while they're powered up. After a while though, Gordon and his men finally arrive. With the overwhelming amount of police now on the scene, Bane decides that a retreat is best. Joker thinks he's being a coward and fires his gun at Bane's escape helicopter. In retaliation, Bane fires a rocket launcher at him. Bane misses, but the explosion launches Joker off the building, sending him free-falling towards the pavement. Batman sees Joker fall off the roof, and instead of just letting the Joker die and calling it a day, he decides to rescue him. Joker, still crazy as ever, decides to try and attack his savior. When they safely make it down to the ground, Joker is rightfully confused.
Now why would you do that? Newsflash! I'm the one who's trying to kill you! Those were two very, very bad men. Ooh, the things they've done. You really don't want to know. They deserved death. Just like me. Freeze! Don't move, freak! I think he's talking to you. Take him down!
Let me guess. He got away. Take him to Blackgate.
the Bat! Your partner! My partner?
Who else would jump off a building to save your sorry ass?
You know, officer... I was wondering the same thing myself.
To my surprise, the game detours us away from Batman and gives us more background on Joker, which I actually think was a very smart decision. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of that Black Mask twist, I do think WB Montreal give Joker some excellent character development from here on out, including explaining his fascination with Batman. Now that Joker's arrived at prison, he's required to be examined by psychologist Harley Quinn per her agreement with the Warden. Harley wants to better understand the Joker, and he gives her a monologue regarding his past, beginning by asking Harley if she's ever had a really bad day. This is another nod to the Killing Joke, where Joker presumes that everyone has the capacity to go crazy like him, all it takes is one bad day. That's how it happened for him, and he's correct in that Batman started out the same way, the day his parents were murdered in front of him. In The Killing Joke, Joker aims to prove this theory by giving Gordon one really bad day to see if it makes him crazy, but I won't spoil how that goes here, in case you'd like to check it out for yourself. However, we do need to discuss the origin that they give Joker in that comic, because it's used as the basis for his origin as he describes it here to Harley in the game. We start by seeing Joker performing stand-up at a comedy club, but gets booed off stage. In the comic, prior to becoming the Joker, he was an aspiring comedian but was largely unsuccessful at it. To make matters worse, his girlfriend was pregnant, and they were broke, which only put more pressure on his failures. In an attempt to scrounge up some money fast, he reluctantly agreed to help the Red Hood gang with a robbery when they approached him for help. Prior to trying to become a comedian, he worked as a lab assistant at the Ace chemical plant, something the Red Hood gang felt they could exploit. They needed someone who knew the chemical plant inside and out to navigate them through it so they could rob the place next to it. Prior to the robbery, Joker learns that his wife and unborn child died in an electrical accident, but the Red Hood gang still force him to assist in the robbery. The day of the robbery, the Red Hood gang place a red helmet and cape over his head to conceal his identity, or so they tell him. In all actuality, this was their ploy to evade the police. They make him look like the leader of the gang, so the police will focus on him instead of the actual gang members. It works, since when they accidentally trip the alarm, the police and Batman focus on who they perceive to be the leader. In a panic, he jumps off the ledge and into the water of the Ace chemical plant, turning his skin pale white and his hair green, transforming him into the Joker. The game doesn't give this information directly and is instead more of a dreamlike interpretation of it as we watch Joker walk around in the Red Hood attire. This obscurity is likely intentional because even in The Killing Joke, Joker admits that he often remembers his origin differently and that if he had to pick a past for himself, it would be multiple choice. As we continue walking through Joker's mind, he'll occasionally have visions of a giant bat creature, and prior to its appearance, we can see a blink and you miss it flash of something before it shows up. It's nothing too major, but the flashes are of a couple different images, reminiscent of a Rorschach inkblot test that you might receive from your psychiatrist. The first one looks like a bat, then the next one kind of explodes in brightness, before transforming into the final one that kind of looks like a face with a crazy smile with bats flying around it. Maybe I'm just projecting my own subconscious onto it, but I think it's cool the way it combines elements of both Batman and Joker's iconography to demonstrate how the two are fused together in Joker's mind. Throughout this scene, we can hear Joker's conversation with Harley as he details his thoughts on fate. He now believes that there are no chance encounters and that everything has been building up to the moment he would meet someone special, and how meeting that special someone has changed his life and perspective of everything. Of course, he's referring to Batman and how he feels that Batman is the same as him, but Harley assumes he's talking about her, teasing up their twisted relationship. I think this was very well written, and not only details Joker's perspective on Batman and the relationship they have, but it also forms the basis of how Harley fell for the Joker. Joker and Harley have a terrible relationship where Joker is often abusive and takes advantage of her, so having Harley foolishly misunderstand Joker's words here and him take advantage of that feels very true to those characters. I also love how it then transitions to Batman having a similar internal struggle about the man that he met tonight, as he has flashbacks of his interaction with Joker. This leads us to a minor dream sequence, similar to one of these Scarecrow sequences in Arkham Asylum, where Batman takes a stroll down Crime Alley and witnesses the death of his parents again, as he ponders why he does what he does. If you're wondering why Batman decided to save the Joker, it's never explicitly stated in the game. His no-kill rule is because he feels like if he kills once, he'll lose control and kill more, but in this case, he wouldn't have killed the Joker and totally could have pulled the
I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
So why did he save the Joker? I think it's meant to be an unclear answer that maybe Bruce isn't even too sure of, and it definitely makes Batman all the more fascinating to Joker. My personal interpretation is that Bruce believes in the rehabilitation for even the worst criminals, and that he wants to prevent any death that he can in order to honor his parents. It's of course very open to interpretation though, so I'd be very curious to hear what you all think. But even with the Joker behind bars, the night still isn't over since Bane is still on the loose. The police scanner picks up a report of someone matching Bane's description being killed and held at the morgue. Batman decides to head there next to inspect the body and confirm whether or not it's Bane. Alfred doesn't approve and is tired of Bruce rushing out to risk his life unnecessarily. Alfred's had enough, which leads to this incredible cutscene between the two of them.
Master Bruce, stop! Master Bruce! Bruce, I will not in good conscience allow you to go. You're outmatched by these assassins.
What?
You're not some hardened vigilante. You're a young man with a trust fund and too much anger. You're in over your head and I don't want this to be your end.
Alfred, who do you see when you look at me? The boy whose shoes you used to tie every morning? The teenager you drove to his first date? While you are here every night, I am out there. The only thing between the innocent and the predator.
Be.
No, not may be. I am. When the mugger or the thief stops to think twice, that is fear. That is what I am. That is why they hired assassins, because I am the reason the criminals breathe easier when the sun rises. So no, Alfred, I am not in over my head. Tonight will be my end, but it will be theirs.
This could be my favorite cutscene in the game, just from a pure character development standpoint. It's short, but it goes a long way to show Bruce and Alfred's perspectives on Bruce's crusade. Alfred is genuinely fearful that Bruce will die out there, and Bruce feels that he is the only one who can truly save Gotham. This younger Bruce Wayne is a lot more cocky and stubborn, unwilling to accept help, and carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. Alfred knows Bruce can't do it alone, and is trying to convince him otherwise. They provide a good balance for each other, and I think I like this cutscene so much because it gives insight into their relationship that we don't usually get from these games. Also, Bruce has been a real dick to Alfred this entire game, so it's nice to see Alfred stand up to him for a moment. Thankfully though, Bruce and Alfred apologize to each other pretty much immediately, stating that they understand where the other is coming from. With them back on good terms, we sneak back into the GCPD to examine the body in the morgue. Unfortunately, the body doesn't belong to Bane, and is instead one of his Venom-enhanced henchmen. After reviewing the autopsy, Batman is able to determine that this henchman was using a new variation of the Venom drug that gives increased strength but has a side effect of damaging the brain's memory center. As we're analyzing the body, Bane's tracker becomes active, so we leave to chase him down. The tracker leads us to Bane's hideout. In the hallway, we can see a couple Easter eggs. On the ground are some newspapers referencing an identity thief, and judging by the bandages on the victims' faces, I'm guessing this has to do with the villain Hush, a skilled plastic surgeon able to alter his own appearance to look like someone else. There's also reused assets from Arkham Asylum of Killer Croc. I'm not sure why they're here, but it could have something to do with Croc and Bane's rivalry in the comics. When Bane first shows up to Gotham, he decides to make a grand entrance by easily defeating Gotham's strongest villain, Killer Croc. It's basically the idea of punching out the biggest dude in prison on your first day. In this case, Bane shows up, breaks both of Croc's arms, and walks away. Croc hates him for this, and when he later heals, he attacks Bane for revenge. So perhaps these images here are insinuating that Bane has been studying the strength of Killer Croc. Once we make it inside Bane's actual hideout, it seems he's already left, but this gives us an opportunity to investigate. We learn that Bane has been experimenting with a new form of venom, calling it TN1, likely the same stuff used by the corpse at the morgue. Unfortunately for Bane, it seems he hasn't been able to find a way to bypass the memory-damaging side effects of TN1. Further investigation of Bane's hideout leads us to another room where Bane has a Bat computer of his own. On the screen, he has an interview clip of Bruce Wayne on loop, next to an image of Batman, indicating that Bane has deduced our secret identity. This is in line with the comics, since Bane was able to figure out that Bruce Wayne was Batman during the Nightfall series. In that story, Bane causes a breakout at Arkham Asylum, causing many of Batman's worst villains to run rampant on Gotham. Batman would spend the next few months rounding them up, exhausting himself in the process. This was Bane's plan, and he waited until Bruce was at his breaking point, and then snuck into Wayne Manor to break him for good. In a rage, Batman blows up the entire room, destroying all of Bane's evidence that he's Batman. Still, Bane is a major risk, so Batman warns Alfred to hide out in the Batcave, since Bane may target Wayne Manor. Batman intends to rush over to protect Alfred, but as luck would have it, this is the exact moment that the assassin Firefly has taken hostages and planted bombs on the bridge. Batman is forced to make a tough choice, either rush to Alfred or save the hostages on the bridge. He assumes that Alfred will be safe in the Batcave, so he decides to handle Firefly. I'm sure you can see where this is going. At the bridge, it seems that Firefly isn't aware that Joker has been captured and that the 50 million bounty is null and void. So Firefly is stupidly doing all of this for nothing. Nonetheless, he's rigged the bridge with bombs that he'll detonate if any police set foot on it. However, Gordon doesn't know about the bombs and is planning to have his men breach to rescue the hostages. Batman uses the Batwing to lure away Firefly so he can sneak in and warn Gordon. Like Batman, Gordon is stubborn and won't hear him out. Batman now has to hurry to disarm the bombs, potentially without Gordon's help. We successfully disarm 2 of the bombs, but another one is locked behind a fire door that Gordon has access to. Batman tells Gordon to open up the door, and Gordon basically tells him to screw off. So instead, Batman tasks Alfred with hacking the codes to the door so he can access them himself. In the meantime, we go defuse the 3rd bomb. Firefly has started destroying the bridge though, leaving much of it in ruins. Gordon then decides to have his men breach the bridge, ignoring Batman's warnings. Alfred provides Batman with the codes to bypass the locked fire door, and we head for the 4th bomb. Along the way, we're intercepted by Firefly, who has the remote detonator in his hand. Batman manages to disarm the detonator from him, but we're forced to fight him now to keep him away from it. Firefly is a pretty unique boss fight compared to everyone else we've fought though. Since Firefly is airborne, we have to use different strategies to combat him. Primarily our utility belt, since we'll be using our glue grenade to trap him in a glob of glue, long enough for us to whip batarangs at him for damage. After doing that a few times, we'll fire the Batclaw at him and pull him close for a damaging kick. Despite our best efforts, Firefly's jetpack gives him a speed advantage and he's able to reclaim the detonator. Now armed with the detonator, Firefly decides to blow up the bridge, killing everyone on it including Batman. To our surprise, the detonator doesn't work, meaning Gordon and his men must have reached the bomb in time to disarm it. Now that we don't have to worry about the bombs, we can go back to fighting Firefly. The rest of this boss fight plays out exactly like earlier. Glob up Firefly with glue grenades, hit him with some batarangs, and then use the Batclaw to reel him in. It's pretty straightforward, but it's enjoyable using a variety of gadgets in a boss fight. It also forces you to utilize your quickfire gadgets if you haven't been doing so already, a useful tool in any combat scenario. But ultimately, it was a pretty cool boss fight overall, and I also enjoyed that Firefly has some of the cheesiest lines in the game. With Firefly taken down though, Batman decides to briefly meet up with Gordon. Even though they're still a bit resistant towards each other, they also seem to have a bit more respect for one another now.
You didn't listen.
I'm not big on taking orders from wanted men.
I'm not big on taking orders from cops. I should have gotten to that last bomb.
Yeah. And I should have given you access to that security door. But between the 2 of us, we covered it pretty well.
Now that the bridge is under control again, Batman heads back to the Batcave, but it seems he's too late.
Alfred, I am in your house. Bruce, Bane, come home. Say your goodbyes. Once you've had time to turn grief to anger, then you'll be ready to face me. I have left enough life in him for some final words. If you hurry. Alfred!
Once at the Batcave, we find Alfred under the rubble of the incomplete Batmobile, and Alfred is on the verge of death. Batman feels that he's failed Alfred the same way that he failed his parents, but he has an idea to save him. Seeing those paramedics at the GCPD gives him the idea to use his shock gloves as a defibrillator and beat Alfred back to life. Alfred's alive, but Bruce is still at a low point with a lot of self-doubt. He no longer feels that he can save Gotham, stating that he can't even protect his own home. Alfred gives him some words of encouragement, but also tells him that he can't do this alone, and that he needs to start accepting help from others. At this moment, it's broadcasted that the Joker has escaped from his cell in Blackgate Prison and has started a riot. Gordon is requesting help from anyone who can provide it. Alfred's words of wisdom give Bruce the motivation to rise again as Batman, and this is also the turning point for their relationship. Bruce treats him more as an ally instead of a servant, and it seems that Bruce is now more open to working with others instead of trying to handle everything on his own. The next order of business, though, is stopping the riots at Blackgate for the 2nd time tonight. The Joker has managed to escape containment, and Blackgate is out of control. After sneaking in, we save a few hostages, one of which is Harley and Quinzel, who informs us that Joker is in the Panopticon waiting for us. I don't think it's ever stated in the game, but I have to assume Harley was the one who helped him to escape after seeing her start to fall for him. That's pretty much the last we'll see of her for the rest of the game though, but we do come across one other familiar face before reaching the Panopticon. That person being Slade Wilson, Deathstroke. Apparently, the Joker wouldn't let Slade out of his cell because he's too scared of him, and rightfully so. After fighting our way through the prison some more, we eventually make it to the Panopticon, where Joker has designed a sick game aimed at testing Batman's moral code.
Let him go!
I understand you. You had a chance to let me die, and you didn't take it. I bet right now you're wishing you had. I've killed a lot of people. I've brought the city to its knees, crippled the police force, and it's not even time to unwrap our presents. Ship it!
Let's do this.
Okay. So, what our friend Bane holds in his hand is a heart monitor. Once he clamps it on, every beat of his bacon little heart will charge the battery on this electric chair. And when it's fully charged... So either you kill Bane...
No, I won't kill him.
But you will. You will fight me with all your resolve, or you will die. Someone is going to die. You, me, or the clown. The question of which one of us it is in your hands.
We're now on to our second boss fight against Bane, and it works a lot like the first. We have to dodge his charges and stun him to deal damage. One cool thing I forgot to mention about his attacks is that he'll occasionally grab you and lift you over his head. If you fail to escape, he'll crack you over his knee the same way he did in that iconic image from Nightfall, where he broke Batman's back. We ultimately won't beat Bane during this battle though, as he inevitably pins us to the ground as Gordon interrupts the commotion. Gordon and Warden Joseph attempt to free the Joker, and who knew Joker had moves like that? Gordon is now at risk at dying to the electric chair alongside Joker, but luckily, Batman has an idea. Thinking back to those paramedics and the way Electrocutioner taunted him, he thinks he can kill Bane and then bring him back to life with the shock gloves. This takes us into round 2 against Bane, where we do just that.
The game is over, Joker. Let Captain Gordon go.
Yeah, put the gun down, freak.
How about I put you down?
Gordon!
Well, that's the Christmas spirit. Well, I'd love to stay and celebrate your victory, but I've got stockings to stuff, mistletoe to hang, and about 15 skyscrapers to blow up before sunrise. Ciao!
Thank God you had your vest on.
He's got my gun! Gordon, Joseph, I need your help to stop the Joker. Our help? You're the so-called vigilante. Or is one kill enough for you tonight? Bane's in cardiopulmonary arrest. I have only minutes to resuscitate him before it's too late.
You mean you didn't?
That's not how I do things. Now go.
Like with Alfred, we attempt to bring Bane back to life, and as you'd expect, he immediately grabs us by the throat.
You leave me no choice, Mr. Wayne.
This leads to our final boss fight against Bane, and if I thought he was scary in the prior levels, he's downright terrifying here. You can't directly engage him in combat, and if you try, he'll deal out devastating hits. Even worse, he starts to learn your tactics, realizing that you like to hide in the vents and floor grates to take him down. He'll occasionally reach into a vent that you're hiding in, leading to plenty of oh shit moments on my end, thinking I had the upper hand. Bane is somewhat unpredictable during this fight, and I was always nervous to approach him, unsure if he'd flip around at the last second and crush me. Just when you get comfortable handling him, the game throws you a curveball and activates a jammer, disabling your ability to track him in detective vision. This means you'll have to nervously leave cover, hoping that Bane isn't nearby so you can disable the jammer. I think that was a really smart decision by the developers, and helped to up the tension. Overall, I loved this fight, and I found myself being audibly scared at times, which I think makes it a successful encounter. When I could finally muster up the courage to attack Bane, the strategy was to sneak up on him and perform a stealth takedown, throwing him into a wall, or ideally into one of these electrified cell doors. Afterwards, he'll start to rampage in a desperate effort to chase you down, so you'll hide and repeat the same process. After dealing enough damage, Bane is finally down for the count, and Batman radios Alfred to let him know that, oh shit!
Master Bruce, are you alright?
With Bane on a final rampage, Batman thinks quick and uses the remote claw to attach Bane to the power generators, dealing him an incredibly powerful electric shock. Bane passes out, and Batman leaves him suspended in the air for the police to find. While hoisting him up, Bane continually murmurs to himself that he must find the Batman, indicating that Bane's use of TN1 has damaged his memory center, and that he's permanently forgotten who Bruce Wayne is. This also explains why he's more of a brute in Arkham Asylum, and why he doesn't know our identity there either. Batman calls Alfred to give him the good news, but we still have to apprehend the Joker. As we make our way back through Blackgate, we find that Warden Joseph has been shot by a sniper, distracting us from the re-emergence of Killer Croc. Croc grabs us, giving the sniper the perfect opportunity to strike when Gordon shows up at the opportune time to take him out. Croc decides this is a good time to leave, as more of Joker's guards arrive to stop us. This leads to a pretty cool little section where we get to fight alongside Gordon to protect the Warden. Even though you may not get a real sense of it here, Gordon is actually a pretty solid fighter due to prior military training. In the Batman Year 1 comic, Gordon single-handedly takes down his corrupt partner Detective Flass, a much larger opponent with Green Beret training. Flass and the rest of the police force didn't like that Gordon wasn't taking bribes and that he was an honest cop, so Flass started threatening Gordon's family, even going so far as to jump him with a few other cops to send the message. Gordon later beat Flass and left him naked, tied up in the woods as a way to send his own message. So if you've ever wondered why Gordon has been able to stay the only honest cop in Gotham, this is a good example of him holding his own. This moment with Flass is also alluded to in one of the audio files where Commissioner Loeb and Black Mask discuss how they can deal with Gordon and that having him jumped already failed, so they need another solution to keep him in line. Black Mask tells Loeb not to have Gordon killed since they need the good PR that Gordon brings, so Loeb decides that blackmail is the better option and tasks Detective Bullock to set up a honeypot trap for Gordon, meaning they want to trick Gordon into cheating on his wife with another woman. This is likely a reference to Batman Year 1 as well, since Gordon did cheat on Barbara in that story. Gordon fell in love with another cop, Sarah Essen, and started to have an affair with her. Loeb was able to get pictures of the affair and attempted to use them to blackmail Gordon. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Gordon opted to tell Barbara about the affair, removing the leverage that the cops had on him, but beginning the downfall of his marriage. Going back to the main story though, Gordon stays with Warden Joseph as Batman confronts Joker in the chapel. Batman tells Joker that Bane is alive, and then proceeds to beat the shit out of him, going full anime style on him with a rapid flurry of punches. Batman begins to choke the Joker to the point that it seems like he might kill him. Joker even seems like he wants him to do it. Batman manages to pull himself together and just knock him out instead, as Gordon enters the room. Gordon is still conflicted about Batman and tries to arrest him, but he gets distracted and Batman flees. We then get voiceover from Gordon as he talks to his daughter. He tells her about how this night has changed his perspective and how he hopes that both he and Batman can give the people of Gotham something to believe in. We also see the Joker as he's being wheeled back into prison, and he's still amused at how Batman was able to outthink him earlier. We also see Harley is right beside him, setting up their relationship for Arkham Asylum. And that ends the main story of Batman Arkham Origins. In the credits, we get one final moment of foreshadowing as we listen to an interview on the Jack Ryder radio show. One of his guests is Quincy Sharp, the future warden of Arkham Asylum. Quincy blames all of Gotham's Christmas Eve problems on the failings of Blackgate Prison, feeling that we need a stronger institution to house these more high-risk inmates. He states that he will reopen the currently defunct Arkham Asylum and make it into an institution for the criminally insane, housing the worst of Gotham's criminals like the Joker. Quincy's words are also incredibly ironic, knowing that the Joker will one day cause a riot in there too, but that's a story for a different video. As far as the story in this game, I think it was expertly written. I know I had some gripes with the Black Mask Joker twist, but it's far from ruinous to the game, especially since I think the rest of it is done so well. I think where it excels the most though is its character development and how it sets up the relationships that we've come to know in the other Arkham games. For example, I found that scene between Bruce and Alfred to be really powerful, and it's cool seeing Bruce grow as a person to be more accepting of help from others. Batman's relationship with Gordon was also well established as they started off reluctant to trust each other and then slowly began to respect what the other was doing. I also like how they explain Joker's fascination with Batman and how they're two sides of the same coin. Since Joker is such a prominent villain in the Arkham series, I think it was right to take a moment and delve into his psyche by giving us that brief level focused on him as well. I also really loved how they handled Bane. The way he could knock around Batman and outthink him made Bane feel like a genuine threat, and he was legitimately scary to me. I also think he had the best and most challenging boss fights in the game. The cinematics were also top-notch, and there was a lot of skill demonstrated with how each shot was framed, as well as the direction of the motion capture. There were some truly epic cinematics, like the opening one setting the tone for the game, or the first-person view of loose lips being dangled from the roof, and how terrifying Batman looked to him. The cinematics went a long way to enhance the storytelling of the game, and they were a joy to watch throughout. WB Montreal definitely brought their A-game to the storytelling, and I was incredibly engaged throughout it. It's tough to do, but I definitely think they managed to meet the high standards set by the other Arkham games. The story isn't quite done yet though, as we still have another end credit scene and a DLC. For the end credit scene, we see Deathstroke still in his cell as he's approached by Amanda Waller, enlisting him to Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad. This is a pretty cool tease, and I believe it picks up in a small tie-in game that released after this one, called Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. My understanding is that is a full game on its own, so we'll save that for a potential future video. But now let's get into the DLC story, Cold Cold Heart. This story focuses on the villain Mr. Freeze and takes place shortly after the events of the main game on New Year's Eve.
People caring for people. Compassion. That's the foundation Gotham was built on. And I have proudly built GothCorp on that same foundation. That's why we're called the People Company. Thank you so much. Please.
Mr. Boyle seems to be after your title as Gotham's biggest philanthropic industrialist.
Gotham needs more people like him.
Bruce!
Hey.
I am blown away by your support.
It's well deserved. You're going to change the world, Ferris.
Hey, we'll change it together, right?
Pardon me, Mr. Boyle. The press is waiting. This way, please.
I'd say the future is looking very, very bright for Gotham. Now, it's almost midnight, and you all know what that means. Let's get this New Year's Eve party going with the... Forget to pay your heating bill, Bruce?
Happy New Year, everybody! Where do you think you're going? Don't move!
Bring me Ferris Boyle.
Mr. Freeze has crashed Bruce Wayne's humanitarian awards ceremony at the mansion, and Bruce sneaks off to get the Batsuit. He's apprehended by some of Freeze's men, but easily takes them down, freeing Alfred in the process as well. Before heading straight to the Batcave, you can take a moment to explore Wayne Manor. A cool detail is that you can see the portraits of some of Bruce's ancestors, one of which is Solomon Wayne, Bruce's great-great-great-great-grandfather from the 1800s. Solomon was a judge and entrepreneur who funded a lot of Gotham's architecture during this time through talented architect Cyrus Pinckney, a character we'll be discussing more a bit later. We can also see a portrait of Solomon's brother Joshua Wayne, who ran the various Wayne businesses. Solomon and Joshua also played a role in the Underground Railroad, helping slaves escape via the caves under Wayne Manor. There's also Sir Gawain of Wayne, a knight of the Scottish court from the 14th century. Continuing through the manor though, we make our way to the wine cellar for access to the Batcave. We'll encounter guards along the way, forcing us to take them out silently. This was a pretty fun challenge since we can't rely on our detective vision or any gadgets we'd have as Batman, and we're forced to be sneaky as Bruce Wayne. When we make it into the cellar, we find more guards and learn that they are Penguin's men. Why would Penguin want to team up with Freeze and lend out his men? Well, one of the thugs reveals that Penguin was interested in helping Freeze since his plan involved destroying Wayne Manor. The Waynes ruined the Cobblepots back in the day, and Penguin still holds a grudge. After taking down Penguin's men, we go inside a hidden elevator that takes us to the Batcave. Once inside, Alfred suggests that we use the Prototype Extreme Environment Suit, or XE suit for short. Bruce doesn't think it's ready yet and decides to don his normal outfit instead. By the time we arrive back at the mansion, the henchmen have set it ablaze and have captured Ferris Boyle. When we show up to rescue him, we're frozen in place, and Mr. Freeze steals Ferris Boyle away. Without much to go on, we return back to the city and start interrogating Penguin's men. One of them informs us that Boyle has likely been taken to GothCorp, his own company. When we arrive at GothCorp, we learn that Penguin is there too, but has entered a sealed room that we don't have access to. We'll next hunt down a guard who might have the access codes, but along the way we can see displays of some of GothCorp's inventions, which reveals that GothCorp has been investing a lot in cryogenic research lately. After rescuing the guard and obtaining the access codes, we continue our pursuit of Penguin, Freeze, and Boyle. Eventually, we find them in a standoff as Penguin attempts to double-cross Freeze. He's taken Boyle hostage for himself, thinking that Freeze must want Boyle for some high-powered weapon he doesn't know about. Freeze isn't after a high-powered weapon, but Penguin won't listen. Batman decides to intervene.
Now, you again.
Belong to me.
I'll give you one chance to let him go.
Threats are meaningless to a man who has lost everything.
Penguin is now trapped in this giant wall of ice and tells us that the only way to knock it down is with a cryo drill he's got stashed at the My Alibi nightclub. As we're leaving to retrieve it, we can see that a lot of pipes in the facility are leaking, causing the temperature to drop rapidly. Batman won't be able to survive in some of these areas without his XE suit, so we'll have to retrieve that as well. Once we don our new XE suit and acquire the drill, we return back to GothCorp. Inside, we need one final piece to power the drill, which we can find in the weapons testing lab. However, there are dead bodies here, and Batman gets the sense that there's more going on here than he initially realized, so we conduct an investigation. After putting all of the pieces together, Batman is able to determine what happened in this room, as well as Mr. Freeze's origin.
Odd. Freeze was secretly doing research on Huntington's Korea, but this is a cryogenic weapons lab. The test subject was Nora Freeze. Now I know what happened here. Boyle hired Victor to help advance the secret cryoweapons program within GothCorp. In exchange, Boyle agreed to devote GothCorp resources to finding a cure for Nora's Huntington's. But Boyle was more interested in how Victor had managed to put Nora into cryostasis. When Victor realized that Boyle had no intention of following through on their deal, he decided to do the Huntington's research himself. But Boyle didn't like that. The cryochemical cocktail altered Victor's metabolism, as well as the guards. Boyle escaped ahead of the plume and had the lab quarantined. Victor survived, but he knew that leaving the supercooled lab would kill him. So he built himself a suit and utilized an organic supercoolant to keep his core temperature sub-zero. All this violence. He's just trying to save his dying wife.
Now that we know Mr. Freeze's motivations and that Ferris isn't the good man we thought he was, it's time to confront them both. First, we have to get through the giant ice wall that Penguin is trapped in. Unfortunately for him, there's enough room to cut a doorway into it without having to save him, so Batman just leaves him stuck in the ice. Now that we're in the room, we can confront Freeze.
Victor, you have to let him go.
I'm taking my wife. You can't stop me.
I know the truth, and so will the police. Boyle will face judgment for his crimes.
It was an accident! You don't know what you're talking about!
Nothing matters. Do you understand? Nothing but my Nora!
You've endangered lives all over this city. Nora would never have wanted this.
No. What she wants is to live a long life in the warmth of the sun. Her hand in mine. And because of him, she'll only feel the icy touch of a man whose emotions run as cold as the blood in his veins.
Freeze isn't cooperating, so this forces us into a boss fight against him. Freeze played a prominent role in Batman Arkham City, with his boss fight being one of the most praised encounters in that game, due to Freeze's ability to learn our tactics and adapt to them. So this boss fight has a high bar to contend with. I think I like the Arkham City fight better, but this one is still pretty good and does enough differently to stand on its own. We have to navigate around the room, while Freeze patrols from the center, keeping an eye out for us. We have to avoid where he's looking, while also taking out the guards that enter the room. Not only that, but we also have to shut down these cryo-generators. This adds a lot of tension because if Freeze sees you, he'll zap you with his ice gun and put everyone on high alert, so you have to wait for the opportune time. After managing to shut down all three, this forces Freeze to drop into the room and search for you on foot. Like in the Arkham City game, you can only do a stealth takedown from behind once. After doing so, the container on his back will start to leak harmful cryovapor, preventing you from getting behind him. You can still use other methods to take him down, but I found the most effective way was to use the icicles that have formed on the roof. Using your new thermal gloves, you can superheat your batarangs and throw them at icicles to drop them to the ground. Timing them to hit Freeze while he's under them will deal a decent amount of damage, and you can do this repeatedly. After a while, Nora's containment pod will start to experience a containment failure, forcing Freeze to tend to it. While he's distracted, Batman grabs him from below and severely damages Freeze's suit, weakening him. Unfortunately, Boyle is the true villain here.
Thanks for doing the heavy lifting, Batman. But you shouldn't have stuck your nose in my business. And here I thought I was going to have a problem explaining what happened in your lab. I mean, the police are never going to look at me after what you did. And with this bat freak dead, there won't be anyone left to say otherwise.
Cryogenic containment failing.
And that just leaves you.
Please, you can save her. You just have to bypass the cryo.
Victor! Keep down! I'll keep you alive long enough to see her go! No!
I also think it's a funny detail that when Boyle hits Freeze here, it lowers his health bar. But anyway, Batman breaks free from the ice to take down Boyle and restores the cryo-containment to Nora's pod.
I'm sorry, Victor. I can't give you peace, but I can give you justice.
And that ends the DLC story Cold Cold Heart. During the credits, we get some extra details on the future of these characters. Boyle, Penguin, and Freeze have all been apprehended, while Quincy Sharp uses Freeze as another example of the type of criminal that needs the special attention that Arkham Asylum can provide. We know Freeze will ultimately end up in Arkham, since we can see his frozen cell as one of the Easter egg locations in that game. The news is also reporting that James Gordon is the front-runner for Police Commissioner, and we'll see him in that role in the Arkham Asylum game as well. There's also a fun Easter egg where one of the security guards describes Batman fighting.
Next thing you know, bam, boom, kapow! The bastards are all on the ground, KO'd! I didn't even see them coming!
This is a nod to those cheesy fighting captions that would pop up during the old 60s Batman show. Overall, I thought this story DLC was pretty cool. It takes a lot of inspiration from the animated series, specifically the Mr. Freeze episode Heart of Ice, and the opening title card gives me some of those vibes as well. One difference between the show and the game that I found interesting was whether or not Bruce knew Boyle was bad. In the show, it's made clear to Bruce from the beginning that Ferris Boyle isn't a true humanitarian, and instead bought his way to that award for publicity. I like this in the show, but I think WB Montreal were right to change it in the game. If you don't know the story from the animated series or comics, then you're probably right there with Bruce, believing that Ferris is a genuinely good man. It makes for an interesting ride as both the player and Bruce discover that he's truly a nasty human being, and it's another example of why Bruce has trust issues. I think it also plays with your assumptions, since you're led to believe that Mr. Freeze is just another run-of-the-mill villain, determined to rob someone or further his evil schemes. In all actuality, Freeze is a rather tragic character. His sole motivation is to rescue the woman he loves, and he's willing to do anything to save her, and it's disappointing that he always takes things too far. The way the show ends for him is actually kind of sad, because he's left in his cell, unable to further his research to save her.
I can only beg your forgiveness, and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
I think Freeze is actually a really compelling character with a lot of depth, so it's nice to see him get a bit of the spotlight in both Origins and Arkham City, although I personally think he deserves to be a leading villain at some point in the future. The Cold Cold Heart DLC as a whole is pretty good in my opinion, but it isn't quite as fulfilling as the main game. Despite some cool new locations like Wayne Manor and the ice-infested Gothcorp, the DLC ends up feeling kind of hollow. I think it's because the whole middle section feels like it's padded with fetch quests, most notably when you have to leave GothCorp to obtain parts of the cryo drill and get the XC suit before returning back to progress. It felt kinda needless to the story, which is disappointing because they did such a good job of avoiding that feeling in the main game. Ultimately, I think the DLC was good for what it was, but it didn't quite match the quality of the main story. But I think we've spent enough time discussing the story of the game, so let's start to transition into the gameplay and extras of Batman Arkham Origins. But they're fun to read if you're into all of the lore of Gotham. Another villain on our list is Black Mask, the actual Black Mask, Roman Sionis, who despite having been through one hell of a night already, has brushed it off and jumped right back into his criminal enterprise. Around the city, he's hidden containers storing a secret drug stash, so we patrol the city and destroy them all. The last one, however, is hidden inside the church. After silently taking out all of the guards, we detonate the final container. Right on cue, Sionis shows up. This leads into a combat encounter against both Sionis and his men. He doesn't add anything interesting to the combat, but the novelty of getting to duke it out with a main villain is always fun, especially if you can save them for last and get a close-up takedown. This isn't the last we'll see of Black Mask though, since I believe he next makes a minor appearance in Batman Arkham City. Bane's men are still making a mess around the city as well, led by his lieutenant, Bird. Bird was originally incarcerated at the same prison as Bane, Penoduro, and was later freed by him, making him incredibly loyal to his cause. In the comics, Bird looks a lot different from the game, and he gets his nickname due to his pet Falcon, who we unfortunately never get to see. Bird has been tasked with securing Venom shipments in Gotham, but Penguin doesn't like someone else running drugs on his turf, so he sends his men to oppose Bane's. This makes it easy for Batman to find these shipments, since they are always marked with a large-scale gang fight. We'll stop multiple of these fights and seize the containers, at which point we find a matchbook for the My Alibi nightclub, indicating that Bird must be hiding out there. When we arrive to My Alibi, we find Bird attempting to muscle the owner of the nightclub into handing it over to him. We drop in, defeat Bird and his men, and then leave them for the police. One of the more interesting side missions is for the Mad Hatter. After leaving the sewers in the main story, we're greeted by a bunch of thugs wearing rabbit masks, singing a song inviting us to a party.
You were very cordially, you were very cordially invited to a party, and it will be a grand affair, and it will be a grand affair hosted by the Hatter.
These masks are mind control devices invented by Jervis Tetch, aka the Mad Hatter. Jervis has a fascination with the story Alice in Wonderland and has modeled himself after the Mad Hatter. He also kidnaps girls and makes them his Alice, which is something he's done this Christmas Eve. We'll later arrive to the hat shop to save Alice and interrogate Tetch, but he has a trick up his sleeve. During the interrogation, he gets us to look at a clock in the room, which hypnotizes us, putting us in the world of Wonderland. It's of course very similar to the Scarecrow missions in Arkham Asylum, but this Wonderland twist makes it feel fresh. I actually like this mission a lot because it's so visually creative. It's trippy and dreamlike, and it perfectly captures the atmosphere of a twisted Wonderland based on this Mad Hatter. So I had a lot of fun here, and I honestly think it's my favorite of the different side missions that we encounter. Eventually, we break free from the hypnosis and find Mad Hatter holding Alice hostage. Batman cleverly uses a reverse batarang to catch him off guard, giving us a moment to knock him out. Even that must have been part of the hallucination though, because in this scene, the room is very open and put together, but after beating Tetch, Batman then wakes up, and the room is a huge mess, meaning that we must have been causing a lot of mayhem in our hallucination. This is all really trippy, which I think is pretty cool. As we're leaving, there's also this really weird decoration of two faces, but I can't tell if they're part of the plant sticking out of the vase or part of the wall. Regardless, my mind is still struggling to comprehend it. Once we leave the room and go down this hallway, we can see a variety of paintings on the wall. Each one is reminiscent of a location that we just saw in Bruce's Wonderland hallucination, and I wonder if it's meant to indicate that in our dream state, we actually wandered into the hallway and saw these paintings, causing our mind to convert them into further hallucinatory environments. Maybe that's a reach, but it's cool nonetheless, and I really enjoyed this mission. Our next villain though is one of the assassins tasked with taking us out, Deadshot. This begins when we reach an SOS signal at the same time as a rescue helicopter, when suddenly the helicopter is shot down and crashes into the streets below. We set up a crime scene analysis to determine what happened. After scanning all of the evidence, we determined that there was also a SWAT sniper on a rooftop, but he wasn't the one who shot down the helicopter. Someone managed to shoot the sniper and have the same bullet ricochet off a wall and take out the helicopter. Realizing that Deadshot is the only one capable of making a shot like that, we follow the trajectory of the bullet and find a casing. It has Deadshot's name engraved on it, as well as numbers to a radio frequency. Deadshot uses the radio to invite us to a showdown at the bank, where he'll be waiting. When we arrive, Deadshot is there along with multiple henchmen. This will be another stealth predator mission, but Deadshot adds some extra challenge. Since he's an expert marksman, he can ricochet bullets off multiple surfaces to reach you, even if he can't directly spot you. You can see this via his laser sight as it bounces off multiple surfaces. He'll even use this to threaten his own men if he feels like they're slacking off, which is funny, but it also adds to the challenge. You never know when he might target one of his men as a surprise, so you never feel safe taking one down, since that could be the exact moment he decides to focus on them. This was definitely a very challenging encounter, but also a lot of fun. To defeat Deadshot, you can't just take him down once and be done with him though, you need to sneak up behind him and deal damage while you can, and then escape while he's dazed. You'll do this a few times until he starts to feel paranoid and then grabs the hostage. You have to take Deadshot down without being spotted, or else he'll kill the hostage. After successfully doing so, Batman breaks both of his arms and leaves him tied up for the cops. There's still one assassin left to deal with though, Shiva. At one point during the story, we can hear the sound of a baby crying in a stroller in the middle of an open area. It's clearly a trap, and when we investigate, we're immediately jumped by Shiva. She doesn't seem very interested in the bounty, but is instead more interested in testing us. She tells us that an innocent man is about to be killed, and that we should go save him for our next test. This brings us to a shopping complex, where a man is dangling above a pool of electrified water. We have to shut down the power, but each time we do, we're ambushed by ninjas. The ninjas are a lot of fun to fight though, since they're faster and can evade your attacks. We don't see them a lot in this game, but we'll encounter plenty of them in Arkham City. Now that we've rescued this cop, he asks us to find his partner who managed to shoot one of the ninjas. We'll scan the ninja's blood and follow the trail. We're too late though, since when we find the cop, he's already dead and bagged up. Shiva leaps out again, and we have a conversation with her. Shiva had him killed because he was corrupt, hoping that Batman would approve. He clearly doesn't, but Shiva continues on with this test, giving us the next location. We meet her again in the lobby of Wonder Tower, a location that will be very important in Arkham City. Our next test is to fight her and her minions, and she's definitely a good challenge, although she fights identical to the martial artist enemy type. After getting her health down enough, she'll pull out a sword and begin fighting similar to the ninjas we encountered earlier. Even though she's more of a hybrid of two existing enemy types, she's a pretty cool fight, and I like how she changes up her combat style in phases. We never truly beat her though, since we fight to a standstill. Shiva's impressed and mentions that she understands why the Master has chosen him. Batman doesn't know who she's referring to, but I believe this is foreshadowing Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins. Or if you're more familiar with the Nolan Batman films, it's the same guy as Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Shadows. The storyline will become more prominent in Arkham City, but the premise is that Ra's wants to cleanse Gotham by killing off all of its criminals. He's also looking for a worthy heir to lead the League of Assassins once he's gone, and he's chosen Batman to do so. Batman's no-kill rule is the main problem though, causing Batman to reject the calling. As for Shiva, even though she seems sort of antagonistic here in the game, she is occasionally an ally to Batman and his family. In the comics, she trains future Robin, Tim Drake, in combat as well as with mastering his proficiency with the bow staff. If you recall from earlier, she's also the one who had a relationship with rejected assassin David Kane, making her the mother of future Batgirl Cassandra Kane. When Batman gets his back broken by Bane and Nightfall, Shiva's the one he reaches out to help him retrain his skills. So she's been a noteworthy ally in Batman's history. Our next villain is a notorious one, Edward Nygma, the Riddler. We'll first encounter him early on in the game since he's set up jammers around the city, blocking our use of the Batwing's auto-navigation capabilities. We'll have to go to each tower in Gotham and hack the terminals to disable the jammers. Reclaiming one will unlock that district for fast travel using the Batwing. Nygma hacks our comms and communicates with us each time, stating that he's trying to clean up Gotham too. Instead of beating up criminals like Batman though, he's decided to find dirt on all the corrupt members of Gotham and blackmail them. He's scattered these data packs around the city, and Batman aims to find them all. These data packs will act similar to the Riddler trophies of the other games, which I think was a nice touch by WB Montreal. It doesn't make as much sense to have a bunch of trophies scattered around the city, but hidden data packs seems a bit more logical. We also find the location of Riddler's hidden lair, but we can't fully access it until we accomplish multiple tedious tasks. Not only do we have to find all 200 data packs, but we also have to destroy network relays in each district. To help us find these, we can locate the men Nygma hired to hide the data and interrogate them. Doing so reveals their locations on the map. Not only is each data pack hidden, but there's often some kind of puzzle associated with claiming it. Some are pretty easy, while some take a bit more thought. It's definitely on theme with the Riddler trying to outsmart you, but I can't say I ever really found these fun. We'll talk a lot more about data packs and Riddler trophies throughout each of these games, but I think my main issue with them is that it always feels like there are way too many of them. You could trim this number down by half, and maybe that wouldn't be too bad, but it always feels like a chore. I think I dislike them more in this game though, because the reward for doing so is so minimal. After destroying all the network relays and collecting all the data packs, you can return to Riddler's headquarters, destroy his equipment, and then enter his secret room. Inside, you'll find pieces for all the various traps and puzzles, as well as a board compiling his thoughts on who he thinks Batman could be. He's close, since it seems that he's narrowed it down between Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent. Harvey is commonly thought to be Batman since he's such a power for good as Gotham's district attorney, and they have similar builds. Of course, this won't last forever though, since Harvey eventually hits a breaking point after being scarred, turning him into the villain Two-Face. But our main reward is hidden behind a secret wall, and it contains the first Riddler trophy, like we'll see later in Arkham Asylum. It's a fun nod to the future games, and it sets up Riddler's determination to test Batman and outsmart him, but it does nothing for the gameplay. Batman has been taking gadgets off of defeated villains and repurposing them for himself this entire game, so I think it would have made more sense for us to find some kind of cool gadget or upgrade in here. Really, just something of excitement for players. Collecting all of the Riddler data packs is a real slog, so I wish WB Montreal had rewarded that more. There is some incentive to collecting them all though, since the extortion files unlock audio logs and intel in the character profiles, and if you return to Alfred after completing the Riddler side mission, he will have found more information on Riddler's identity. Alfred has learned that his real name is Edward Nashton, and that he works for the police's cybercrime division. This is how he was able to dig up dirt on everyone so easily. Also, if you die during a Riddler-related mission, you can see that his badge says IT Consultant, another hint towards his true identity for the player. That's pretty much everything you get from beating this mission though, so overall I'd say you could skip the Riddler side mission and not feel like you're missing out on too much. Also in Gotham are a few different murders that you can solve. You'll receive the location of a dead body, and you can use your evidence scanner to recreate the crime and reveal the killer. After doing so, you can track down the killer and get them to confess their crimes. These were each pretty brief, only taking about a couple minutes each, but I think that was the right amount of time. The crime scene investigations are fun, but I think they run the risk of becoming tedious if you're forced to do too many for too long. Still, I do like that WB Montreal give you the option to solve murder mysteries around Gotham. Batman is known as the world's greatest detective, so I think it was wise to lean into that and give players the capability to act out those skills. But after solving all of the murders, we're not done yet, since completing it unlocks another side mission. Apparently, Barbara gave Gordon Batman's communication frequency, so he calls to request help in capturing 20 escaped criminals from the Blackgate riot. Batman agrees, taking them down one by one. After capturing them all, Batman requests that Gordon let him operate freely without harassment from the police, and Gordon says he'll think about it. So kinda anticlimactic, but it's cool seeing Gordon and Batman's partnership slowly begin. One neat detail with this side mission though is that fans discovered that the booking number for this criminal is the same one for O.J. Simpson, so a cool little detail there. There's still one other murder case left to solve though, and that's of Cyrus Pinckney. Cyrus was the architect that was working with Solomon Wayne to build all of the impressive architecture that's still in Gotham today. Unfortunately, Cyrus was eventually murdered, and the crime was never solved. While roaming around Gotham though, you can find various plaques on some of the buildings that Cyrus built, and if you scan them, it'll reveal an audio log that Cyrus had left before he died. It seems that he knew that his life was on the line, and he wanted to leave behind the story for someone to find one day. The gist of the story is that, even though Solomon was funding Cyrus's projects, the money eventually dried up, causing Cyrus to go behind his back and make a deal with Henry Cobblepot, ancestor of the Penguin. Like Penguin, Henry was known to be a shady individual, but Cyrus didn't have a choice. Later, Henry decided that Cyrus owed him for helping him out, and demanded Cyrus build a munitions factory inside the city. Cyrus knew this would be terrible for Gotham, so he went to the mayor and requested he introduce a bill to block Henry's endeavor. It worked, but Henry knew Cyrus went behind his back. He would still act friendly towards him though, later holding a party in honor of Cyrus's 40th birthday. Cyrus knew it was a trap, but decided to go anyway. Fortunately, before going to the party, he first spoke about it with one of his friends, Amadeus Arkham, who he became friends with after helping him create Arkham Asylum. They knew that the wine at the party would be poisoned, so they switched it with a wine of their own, spiked with a concoction to make the user seem dead, but only temporarily. It worked, and everyone believed that Cyrus was dead. Cyrus later resurrected and vowed vengeance against Henry Cobblepot. Interestingly, Henry Cobblepot died not long after this incident, meaning that Cyrus must have been successful in killing him. What happened to Cyrus afterwards is still a mystery though. I thought this was a really cool little side mission, and unlike for Riddler, I really enjoyed hunting down these audio files and unraveling the mystery behind Cyrus Pinckney. I also really appreciate the lore it provides for the creation of Gotham's historical buildings and the people who helped to create them, as well as the ancestors of different characters we're familiar with today. But that leaves us with the final side villain, Penguin. Barbara informs us that Penguin has weapon caches scattered around Gotham, and she asks us to shut them down. Like with Black Mask's drug stashes, we'll drop by each one and destroy it. However, we're actually rewarded for doing so, since this earns us a loot box in the game's online multiplayer mode. That's right, Arkham Origins had a multiplayer mode created by developer Splash Damage. It's since been shut down due to low player counts, but you can still access it on the PC version through mods or by messing with the game's files. I'll leave a link in the description if you're wanting to do so for yourself. I tried it and was able to access it, but wasn't able to actually find people to play with. Still, it looks pretty interesting. In this mode, you can either play as a Joker thug, Bane thug, or Batman or Robin. Penguin is the loot box vendor, and destroying those caches in the main game allows you to open up a few on the house. Among other things, these unlock cosmetics to change the appearance of your character. If you're playing as one of the thugs, you'll run around trying to accomplish different tasks and kill members of the rival gang, or Batman and Robin if you come in contact with them. Depending on which gang you're part of, you can also break out Joker or Bane, allowing you to play as them for a limited amount of time. If you're playing as Batman and Robin, you'll stick to the shadows and try to stealthily take out gang members. It's a pretty cool premise, and I like the idea of having a first-hand experience as a thug, suddenly seeing Batman drop in out of nowhere to take you out. It's unfortunate that the servers were ultimately shut down, but it seems like it didn't review too well anyway. There's still quite a lot of extras in the single player though, and after beating the main story, you'll unlock New Game Plus. In this, you'll restart the game, but with all of your upgrades and unlockables. However, tougher enemies are introduced earlier into the game, and you no longer get the counter indicators above their heads before they attack. New Game Plus is one of my favorite modes in the other Arkham games, and it's the same case here. It introduces more replayability to the story, and changes things up enough to still provide a fun challenge. I especially love how the attack indicators are removed, because it feels like a whole new experience. Now you have to watch the battlefield and read the criminal's body language to anticipate when they'll attack, just like how Batman would. I ended up enjoying New Game Plus a lot overall, to the point that I think it's my preferred mode. However, if you want to take the challenge to the next level, WB Montreal introduced the I Am the Night mode, which unlocks after beating New Game Plus. This is a permadeath mode, where if you die once throughout the entire story, you immediately get reset back to the beginning. Thankfully, this mode isn't required to meet 100% completion of the game, and is instead there for those who want the ultimate challenge. It's a very punishing mode, and it can be very easy to die abruptly, especially in the Predator sections, but overall, I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm glad WB Montreal included it. To further challenge yourself and hone your skills, you can also use the challenge mode, either by visiting the Batcave or by accessing it in the main menu. Here you can try out a variety of different challenges, based around either combat or stealth. For example, with stealth, you'll be set in a room and have to quietly take out all the enemies within it. You'll be timed, and you can also attempt to complete a set of 3 challenges. These challenges typically require you to take down enemies in a specific way, like from a statue or from a grate for example. They can definitely get more intricate than that though, and they're good at making you get creative with your gadgets instead of just hopping behind each enemy and taking them down. The combat challenges have trophies attached as well, but based on score. You want to meet or exceed the highest trophy score ideally, and to do so you need to do a few things. Firstly, you need to keep your combo going as long as possible and without taking hits. If you can complete a round without taking damage or without fumbling the combo streak, you'll get bonus points. You also get more points for varying your combat style, like by using different gadgets. I enjoyed the combat challenges the most, since they're so fast-paced, and it's really satisfying working the room and reaching high combo streaks, as well as experimenting with different gadgets and methods to defeat enemies. One of my favorite options in the challenge mode was the campaign section, where the game combines a couple or more of the combat and predator maps to play sequentially. I also like how it incorporates different challenge modifiers, either making things harder or easy on you, but mostly harder. You can select which ones you want to start with, but don't go too easy on yourself, because those options will be locked for the next challenge room in the series, meaning you could make things substantially more difficult for yourself if you're not careful. These were a lot of fun though, and they also included one DLC campaign, The Initiation. This is technically a story, but not as in-depth as Cold Cold Heart. In it, you experience the trials Bruce Wayne faced as he attempted to earn his right to study under Master Kirigi. We get a minor cutscene introducing the challenge, and we learn that nobody here really respects Bruce and instead see him as an outsider, unworthy of their training. These trials are aimed at earning your place among them, and you'll start with a pretty standard combat challenge, taking out waves of enemies. After which, your next test is a stealth mission. This isn't just a training mission though, as Master Kirigi tells his students to kill Bruce if they get the opportunity, upping the tension. In the combat sections, Bruce felt like he played pretty similar to Batman, only really differing as far as gadgets. For the stealth sections, he feels a lot different since you're limited on gadgets and don't have your cape. I like this though, since it felt really thematic taking down enemies as just a man, with only a few tools at your disposal. The rest of the missions in this campaign play out pretty similar, but the final combat trial is my favorite one. You'll face a variety of difficult enemy types like ninjas and martial artists, but after a certain point, Shiva drops in to fight alongside them. The cool thing about Shiva is that she doesn't have the counter indicators above her head like the other enemies do, so you really have to pay attention to what she's doing and not become too reliant on the indicators. She also has a larger health pool, so it can take some time to take her out. I really love this challenge, and it felt like a fun test of skill, but after overcoming the trials, we get our final cutscene.
You have done well, novice, but you still have much to learn. For the time being, find a rag and clean the floors. So
not much of a reward for Bruce, but he's still alive and has earned his place amongst the others. Initiation Bruce Wayne is also his own separate playable character and can be used in any of the other challenge maps. He gets one alternate costume as well, his vigilante suit, which is my personal favorite between the two. Speaking of playable characters, there aren't many, the only other one being Deathstroke. This is pretty awesome though, and it's the only time he's been playable throughout the Arkham series. However, I'm pretty sure his combat mechanics were based on Robin from Arkham City, since they have similar poses and fighting animations. He still feels like his own character though, and has his own unique gadgets to use both in combat and in Predator stealth missions. He felt a bit limited to me in these stealth sections, but I had a blast using him in combat challenges. I couldn't help but take him through that final initiation mission against Shiva, and tested him out in one of my new favorite challenge maps, 100 vs 1. In this map, you have to take out 100 enemies who slowly drop into the arena in waves. It's a fun test of endurance and gives you a lot of opportunity to get a feel for a character and test out their abilities. Unfortunately, you can't take Deathstroke into the open world, but he's a lot of fun to use in these challenge maps. Like Bruce, he also comes with a couple costumes, one of which is his look from the Injustice game, while the other is called Judas Contract, referencing his outfit in the Teen Titans comic series. While we're on the topic of alternate outfits, Batman has a slew of them. There's of course his default outfit, but you can also unlock a darker version called the Dark Knight suit. There's also Blackest Night, a Green Lantern story involving superheroes rising from the dead, one of which being Batman. There's also the Long Halloween suit, based on an excellent story where Batman investigates murders occurring on each holiday, and no, it's not Calendar Man. There's also Red Sun Batman, based on a Superman What If story with the premise of, what if Superman landed in Soviet Russia instead of America? In that story, Batman's role is that he's an antagonist to Superman's regime. We also have Gotham by Gaslight, a Batman story taking place in the 19th century, with Batman dealing with the Jack the Ripper murders. Next is the New 52 Batman suit, the New 52 being DC's relaunch series for their entire lineup of characters. There is also a metallic version of this suit that you could unlock as a reward for buying the Arkham Origins digital comic for an iOS device. I actually read some of the digital comic for this video, and it's pretty unique. It's a multi-path, choose-your-own-adventure style story where you make decisions for Batman and see how the story unfolds based on your decisions. I played a lot of games like this with that premise, like the Telltale games or Detroit Become Human, but never in a comic. It was cool, but pretty punishing, with a lot of my decisions leading to Batman being unmasked or killed. If you're curious about trying it yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. Going back to the outfits though, there's also Batman Noel, a Christmas tale based on the classic Christmas Carol story by Charles Dickens. Bruce Wayne is essentially Scrooge in this story, and is visited by three prominent figures that help him find clarity. Next is Batman Dark Knight of the Round Table, a crazy story where Batman is trained to fight by Merlin and becomes a member of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table. We also have the Thrill Killer suit, based on a story set in the 1960s where Batman investigates the murder of Dick Grayson's parents. This next one pretty much speaks for itself, but it's the first appearance suit from Batman's original comics. We talked about Blackest Night Batman, and here's the follow-up, Brightest Day, or White Lantern Batman, where Batman is brought back to life. We also have Earth 2 Batman, an alternate world version of Bruce Wayne unafraid to use guns. There's also Earth 2 Dark Knight, based on an alternate world where Thomas Wayne survived the mugging of Joe Chill, becoming Batman himself. Like Deathstroke, Batman also has his suit from the Injustice game that you can unlock. The next one is the Batman 1 Million suit, which you can unlock by creating a WB ID. I did that and still wasn't able to access it, so I don't know if it's still available. Batman 1 Million is a comic series based on a new Batman taking place in the far distant future. The last two skins are exclusive to the PS3 version, and they're pretty awesome. The first is of the classic TV series suit worn by Adam West, and the other is the Nightfall suit. John Paul Valley stood in as Batman while Bruce recovered from his broken back, and designed this suit to help him take on Bane himself. I'm jealous that these suits are only on the PS3 version because they're definitely two that I would want to wear throughout the story, especially Nightfall. There was supposed to be one additional suit, but it was unfortunately cancelled by the developers shortly before the game released. It was reportedly going to be the Batman creature we saw during Joker's Nightmare. Apparently, there was some sort of bug within it that the developers couldn't fix in time, so it was just removed. It's a shame that it was never able to see the light of day as a playable skin, because it would have been so much fun to terrorize Gotham's criminals looking like this. It's also disappointing that we didn't get a playable Joker for these challenge maps. I find it surprising because we get a playable combat section for him during that nightmare sequence. He was also playable in the challenge maps for the PlayStation's version of Arkham Asylum, so it's curious that he wasn't available in Arkham Origins. They could have even had an alternate costume for him in his Red Hood look. He had some pretty cool attack and takedown animations in the brief combat section that we played, so I would have liked to explore that deeper. Going back a bit though, we've talked a lot about the different combat and stealth challenges, but we haven't talked about those mechanics much themselves. And honestly, that's because not much has changed from the previous games. If you're familiar with how combat and stealth work in Arkham Asylum and City, it's pretty much the same here. Not to say that's a bad thing, in fact WB Montreal often stated that their mindset was, if it's not broken, don't fix it, in regard to many of Rocksteady's pre-existing systems. However, where they opted to make changes was mostly with Batman's gadgets and enemy types. There are a few different gadgets in this game, but a lot of them operate roughly the same as gadgets from the other games. However, there are a couple key gadgets that WB Montreal introduced to Batman's arsenal, most notably the Remote Claw and the Shock Gloves. The Remote Claw can be used to create tight ropes high above enemies or used as a zipline, similar to the line launcher in the other games. But it has its own unique features as well, since it can attach to enemies and objects and yank them towards each other. This was a lot of fun in Predator missions because you could immediately string an enemy to a statue to take them out, or launch an exploding canister at someone. I've seen it criticized as being too overpowered, but I don't agree. It can definitely thin the herd pretty quickly, but you're only limited to 3 shots, so you need to pick when best to use them. I found that it gave me a lot of additional options in how I wanted to take down enemies, and it ended up being my favorite gadget to use in the game. The Shock Gloves I'm a bit more conflicted on. After taking them from the Electrocutioner, you can use them in combat after charging them up by fighting enemies. Once activated, they last for a limited time, but can deal out a lot of damage, and they even have their own takedown animations. They're fun to use and they make you feel powerful, but they completely bypass the combat mechanics of the game. For example, enemies with shields or shock batons can provide additional challenge since you can't take them on head on, and instead need to use the vault mechanic to get the upper hand. With the Shock Gloves, you can just spam the attack button and carve your way through these enemies. So it definitely feels overpowered in that sense, and takes some of the challenge away, at least to a point. I doubt this was intentional, but the gloves are so good that I found myself becoming very sloppy during combat when using them, because they're such a crutch that I accidentally start mindlessly attacking everyone. I would stop paying attention to counter icons and whether enemies were grabbing guns. This caused me to take a lot of unnecessary damage, and I realized that I was only becoming this sloppy when I was using the Shock Gloves. So in a sense, I like that the challenge with the Shock Gloves was more of an internal one, to not drop your focus and become dependent on the power of the gloves. It's kind of thematic that way too, because I imagine that's exactly what happened to the Electrocutioner, and why he was always so cocky, but each time we saw him he'd get one-shotted by someone. Regardless, I ultimately like the Shock Gloves, but I think their power should have been dialed back a bit prior to release. I do really like the enemy types that WB Montreal introduced to the game though, specifically the martial artists and the Bane thugs. The Bane thugs are powered by the drug Venom, and they start off very strong, requiring you to prioritize them. To depower them, you need to either perform a beatdown or a takedown, resulting in Batman removing the Venom tubes, after which they basically function like a normal enemy type. It's nothing too flashy, but I like how they can become a problem for you if you don't deal with them, but aren't an overwhelming presence. The martial artists are my favorite though, because they actively fight against you. Most enemies you can trust that your hits will land, but these enemies will parry your attacks. You have to really pay attention when striking at them, in case they deal out any follow-up attacks, meaning you might have to counter them a couple times before you actually land a hit. They'll also charge in with a leaping attack, requiring you to quickly press the counter button twice in order to successfully counter them. Only pressing it once isn't enough, and they'll land a couple quick strikes on you. This becomes even more challenging in the New Game Plus mode, where you no longer have the indicators to tell you what they're doing. I like that this enemy actively challenges you and requires your full attention, and I think they were an excellent inclusion into the game. WB Montreal also added some additional challenges that you can complete through their Dark Knight system. This provides a series of challenges in different categories, and you have to complete each challenge in order. You'll also gain XP and some unlockable rewards for completing them. For example, the Sonic Batarang is locked behind one of these challenges, as well as its upgrade. I think it's a pretty cool idea, but I wasn't a huge fan of this system. Sometimes I would struggle with a particular task, locking me out of higher tier challenges, even though some of the higher tier challenges were things I had already done, so by the time I got them, I'd have to do it again. I think I would have enjoyed it more if all the challenges were accessible from the beginning and I could do them in any order, with upgrades like the Sonic Batarang unlocking after I complete a certain number of them. I still like what WB Montreal were trying to do with the Dark Knight system, but I didn't find it as engaging as I had hoped. I do like the upgrade system though, and I think WB Montreal did a good job in cleaning up the user interface compared to Arkham City's. In that game, it felt kinda cumbersome to navigate and sometimes unclear what I could upgrade and what was already unlocked. In Arkham Origins, the skill progression is a lot clearer, with a whole category dedicated to showing you the core abilities you have unlocked, with the other categories used for new abilities. These categories are for combat, stealth, and auxiliary upgrades. The auxiliary upgrades can't be bought with skill points though, and have to be unlocked through other means like side missions or the Dark Knight system. I think I would have preferred being able to put skill points into these upgrades, but it didn't hinder the experience. Within this Wayne Tech menu screen, you can also find character profiles for everyone you encounter, some of which have audio logs that give them additional lore. Even certain locations have details on them, and I appreciate the depth WB Montreal went into to flesh out the background of Gotham and its inhabitants. Speaking of Gotham, let's talk about the open world for a bit. One of WB Montreal's main enhancements from Arkham City is that they've more than doubled the size of Gotham's explorable space, adding the Pioneers Bridge and New Gotham. They even had to include a fast travel system to help you traverse it. Being able to explore more of Gotham is really exciting, and it adds a lot of room to roam and explore. After roaming around it a lot though, I'm starting to wonder if Arkham City's less is more approach was better. Somehow, Arkham City feels more detailed and exciting to explore compared to Arkham Origins, which after a while feels kinda samey. Maybe there's not enough uniqueness to each district the way that there is in Arkham City, I'm not sure, but it lacked the excitement I'd hoped that it bring me. That being said, I do appreciate the added scale to the map, and I still had fun zipping around and gliding through the streets of Gotham. I also appreciate that WB Montreal attempted to liven up Gotham by adding crimes in progress, which are essentially random events that occur in the city, and they're typically street fights. Unfortunately, these fall kinda flat as well. They're optional, and you're not given much incentive to complete them besides additional XP, so you're likely just going to do a couple of them to try them out, and then ignore them for the rest of the game. It's disappointing, and I wish WB Montreal had found a way to spice them up more. There's still some cool details in the world though, like different Easter eggs and companies from the comics. For example, Soder Cola and Big Belly Burger are both companies from the comics. There are also notable locations like Ace Chemicals, where Joker's origin began, as well as the Monarch Theater, the same theater where Bruce's parents were shot and killed. If you go behind the theater, you can still see the chalk outline of their bodies. There's also a pretty creepy Easter egg at this location that I definitely missed my first time through. During one of the crime scene side missions, you're meant to scan the area to investigate a different crime that went down in this same area. However, during the reconstruction, for just a couple frames, Bruce's parents will show up on the ground. It's really eerie, but I kinda love it. There are also some Easter egg posters scattered throughout Gotham. Besides the Flying Graysons, there's also a poster for Zatanna, a powerful magician who's also a member of the Justice League. There's also a poster for a show called Funny Faces, starring Basil Karlo. Basil Karlo is an actor who becomes the villain Clayface after being doused in a putty that allows the user to shape their appearance into whoever they want. We also have a poster for Rare Jungle Cats presented by Thomas Blake. Thomas Blake is the character Catman, who had a hobby of capturing jungle cats. He'd later become a villain, stealing cat-themed objects. He's basically what Joe Exotic would have become if he never went to prison. On the topic of Easter eggs, there's also a pretty funny hidden cheat code that you can use, which is for big head mode. Batman and the villains you encounter will all have big heads, hands, and feet, and it's kind of like watching a couple Funko Pops fight. But I think we've talked enough about the gameplay and extras, so let's get into the audio section of this video.
Your boss, where's he going?
The boss of me is me.
I want teeth, I want answers.
Wait till Black Mask's assassins get through with you.
What assassin?
Whoever wins is gonna be famous and rich.
At least we know he won't be ugly.
Freeze! Hold me right there!
I'm taking you in.
Not tonight.
No such thing as a Batman, huh?
Just like everything else in the Arkham series, there was a very high bar set for the voice acting. In the Arkham games by Rocksteady, Batman and Joker are voiced by Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, respectively, two legendary voice actors for these characters. However, they didn't return for Arkham Origins, which was a choice made by WB Montreal. Since this game takes place significantly before Arkham Asylum, they wanted new voice actors to give these characters a younger voice, but sound similar enough that it's believable that they will transition into the future versions of these characters. The decision was then made to cast Roger Craig Smith as Batman and Troy Baker as the Joker, both of which, in my opinion, perfectly capture what WB Montreal were trying to achieve. They're also both very high-caliber voice actors with extensive experience in other games. Roger Craig Smith, for example, has played a lot of recognizable characters in recent years. For example, he's played Ezio in the Assassin's Creed games, and Chris Redfield starting with Resident Evil 5, continuing into Resident Evil 6 and Revelations. He's also regularly voiced Sonic the Hedgehog in games like Sonic Generations, and his appearance in Smash Bros. Ultimate, amongst others. You might also recognize him as Captain America, voicing him in animated shows like Avengers Assemble and Marvel Future Avengers. The list definitely goes on from there, but my point is that Roger Craig Smith is a very accomplished voice actor. This wouldn't be his last time voicing Batman either, since he'd later return to voice him in the Red Son and Batman Ninja animated films, as well as the Batman Unlimited TV series. Troy Baker is also a very accomplished voice actor, and this isn't his first role in the Arkham series. In Batman Arkham City, he was the voice of Robin, and we'll see him return as a couple different characters in Batman Arkham Knight. He's also reprised his role as the Joker in the recently released Long Halloween animated films, and he's voiced Batman for the Telltale Batman games. Outside of DC, you might also recognize him as such characters as Joel from The Last of Us, Bruce Banner in Marvel's Avengers, and Sam Drake in Uncharted. As far as how Roger and Troy do as Batman and Joker, I think they did a phenomenal job. It's no easy task to follow up Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, especially when you're trying to give your own take on a role while still trying to stay within the parameters of what those actors established. That's tough, but they nailed it. Not only do I really like their portrayals, but I can believe that these voices of the younger characters could eventually turn into the older versions from Arkham Asylum and beyond. I think I have to give credit to Troy Baker especially though, since his role required a lot of range as the Joker. Batman is usually straightforward and gruff, while Joker has to be maniacal, comical, and intimidating all at once. I think Troy provided that, portraying all the right emotions at the right time. Not to mention that he also had to impersonate Black Mask as the Joker, so I'm very impressed with Troy Baker. Batman and Joker were probably the most crucial roles to nail, but the rest of the cast also turned in incredible work as well. To start, there's Nolan North as the Penguin. Nolan is another big-name voice actor with a long resume, but you might also recognize him from his work as Tony Stark Iron Man in Marvel's Avengers, and Nathan Drake from the Uncharted franchise. Nolan also voices Penguin in Arkham City and Arkham Knight, so we'll definitely talk more about him in the future. I also can't forget to mention Steve Blum, this time voicing both the Electrocutioner and Loose Lips. If you watch any of my other retrospective videos, Steve Blum is likely in it, due to his long list of appearances in comic book games, most notably as Wolverine in various Marvel video games. There's also Carrie Payton playing Killer Croc and Warden Joseph. I know him best from the Walking Dead show where he plays Ezekiel, but outside of that, he's also spent a lot of time voicing DC character Cyborg in various shows and games such as Injustice 1 and 2. We'll also see him return in both Arkham City and Arkham Knight as Azrael. Even though Joker was Black Mask for the majority of Arkham Origins, the actual Black Mask, Roman Sionis, was voiced by Brian Bloom. You might also know Brian from his work as William Blazkowicz in the Wolfenstein games, and he also voiced Daredevil and Captain America in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. There's also JB Blanc, and although I'm not familiar with his other work, I want to compliment his work as Bane. I've mentioned how much I've enjoyed Bane in this game a few times now, and I think JB did a good job voicing him. JB has played Bane on another occasion though, in the Telltale game Enemy Within. Another cool addition to the voice cast was Robert Costanzo, who plays Harvey Bullock here. I think he was a fun choice, since he originally voiced Bullock in the Batman animated series, and I've always enjoyed his portrayal. Another recognizable name is Laura Bailey, voicing Alice and the GCPD dispatcher. She's a big-time voice actress, and she's been in a ton of different video games, and for good reason. She always gives an excellent performance. For example, she's Black Widow in Marvel's Avengers, Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, and Mary Jane in Spider-Man PS4. Believe me, the list goes on as far as talented, noteworthy voice actors who played a role in this game, but these were the ones that stuck out to me the most. Overall, the voice acting was incredible in Arkham Origins, and there wasn't a single character that I felt was lacking, so I have to give a lot of credit to both the performers as well as the casting directors. Let's talk about the score for a bit now, composed by Christopher Drake. Christopher holds zero punches on the soundtrack, and I was extremely blown away by his work. Each track of the OST manages to capture the emotions of its scenes beautifully, ranging from very somber, dramatic moments to full-blown epic heroic Batman scores. I absolutely love this soundtrack, and I think it's one of the best parts of the game. So usually in this part of the video, I'd play a few clips from the original soundtrack for you to listen to, but they keep getting flagged by YouTube, so we'll have to do things a bit differently. Instead, I have 3 gameplay clips where I think the audio design evokes great atmosphere, and I'll play those next. But first, I'm going to start with a bonus one. During the end credits, Joker will sing a song about Batman while he's in jail. I personally don't find it too exciting, but it's kind of fun, so I'll go ahead and play some of it.
There was a time when I believed that you belonged to me. But now I know your heart is shackled to a memory. You won't admit that we're the same, and it's tearing me apart! Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart?
This first one is more of a somber one, and you'll hear it a lot while free roaming around Gotham. I think it creates a lot of atmosphere, it's very calming, but it also gives some solid wintry Christmas vibes, as well as the sense of looming danger. I really love this next one since it captures the moment so perfectly. This one plays during the scene after Bane destroys the Batcave and Bruce resuscitates Alfred. The music starts off very slow and subtle when Bruce is at his lowest point, and then transitions into a more powerful, triumphant score as Bruce finds the motivation within himself to continue.
Alert. The Joker has escaped from his cell and is leading the riots at Blackgate. Repeat, the Joker has taken over the entire prison. Multiple casualties, multiple hostages. Again, we have lost Blackgate. Captain Gordon is calling on anyone for assistance.
This next clip is during the final Shiva fight in Wonder Tower, and I love the background music in it, and I think it's perfect for a fast-paced combat encounter like this one. This OST was absolutely incredible, and I wish I could show you more in this video. These tracks elevate every cutscene and gameplay encounter, and they're so well done. Christopher Drake did an excellent job, and I'd love to see him do more Batman soundtracks.
I feel adrift, floating, like someone's pulled the stopper on my reality, and I'm sucked down the drain into something new. It's all very exciting, really. You wouldn't know what that feels like, I'm sure.
I might. Can you tell me more about how this person makes you feel?
It's like meeting someone I can actually relate to. Which, believe me, dear, I've never felt before. You understand. You're someone who's not afraid to let go and fall. Free falling, and I didn't pack a chute. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I figured you would.
So, may I ask, who is this person?
Oh, someone very, very special. But whose real name I don't even know yet.
My name's Harleen. Harleen Quinzel.
What a pretty name. Do your friends call you Harley?
Oh, I don't have a lot of friends.
Well, Harley, you got one now.
Batman Arkham Origins is definitely overshadowed by the Rocksteady games, but not outclassed. In my opinion, this game meets the same level of quality that the other games in the series meet, meaning that it's an excellent game on its own. Even though it heavily borrowed from everything Rocksteady had established in the prior games, it still manages to bring in some fresh ideas. I think it was a great decision to go the prequel route here instead of shoehorning itself somewhere into the present continuity as well. You can tell they spent a lot of time studying the lore and continuity of the Arkham franchise, and I would say that they really excelled in setting up the basis for the relationships that we've become accustomed to in the other games. A lot of the time, it feels like it's only Batman and Joker who get the most character development, and although they do get great character arcs here, other characters are given more depth as well. For example, I feel like I got a lot more time with Gordon and Alfred, allowing me to understand them more as individual characters. The writing overall is incredibly well done, and I think this is one of the better stories in the Arkham franchise. The cutscenes in this game are expertly constructed as well. Every angle, the pace at which the shots are cut, the motion capture, and the way it all blends with the score are so well done that I always feel whatever emotion they're wanting to evoke. Whether that be fear, confusion, sadness, or triumph, it's always making a solid impact. Then of course there's the outstanding score by Christopher Drake and all the incredible voice talent that elevate every scene. Really, the audio overall for this game goes a long way to capture the proper mood and thematics that you'd want from a Batman game. So overall, I think the storytelling, cinematics, and audio design are really where this game shines the most. However, the gameplay, although good, feels largely like a cut and paste job. I still have trouble criticizing WB Montreal for this though. Rocksteady developed a winning formula, so I think it's wise that WB Montreal opted to not over-tinker with it. Their unique inclusions to the gameplay are hit or miss though, with things like the shock gloves, crimes in progress, and Dark Knight system not doing much to change things up, but I do appreciate their efforts to add new ideas. However, I do think things like the larger open world, remote Batclaw, the I Am the Night mode, and enemy types like the martial artist do help to make the gameplay more refreshing. So even though I think this game catches a lot of criticism for how much of it feels borrowed from the Rocksteady games, I still think WB Montreal made a lot of smart decisions on where to add new things, what to change, and more importantly, what not to change. So I want to grade this game based on how it stands as a whole, and not necessarily how it compares to the other games, or knock it because of reused assets. So ultimately, I give Batman Arkham Origins a 9.5 out of 10. It maintains the quality standard of the other games in the franchise while providing its own unique flavor and executing a story that I absolutely love. I definitely want to replay this game again, and it might even become a new Christmas tradition for me. I'd highly recommend trying it for yourself if you never played it, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I know that may be easier said than done though, since this game is kind of the black sheep of the family, not part of any of the remastered collections that have been released, at least at the time of this recording. Fingers crossed that one day that will change though, because it's an excellent game and shouldn't be ignored. That being said, I always like to compare my score to Metacritic's to see how critics and fans have rated it. Honestly, I was stunned to see this in the 70s for both PC and PS3. Since I played the game on PC, we'll focus on those scores in particular, but it's pretty much the same for each console, and these scores seemed incredibly low to me. I did notice how some reviewers stated that the bugs really ruined the experience for them, so that might have played a factor in a lot of these scores. I definitely ran into some bugs myself, but nothing ruinous or progression halting. I think I had to reload a checkpoint once or twice, but the game autosaves enough that it wasn't a hindrance. I think the fact that WB Montreal didn't expand on the gameplay of Arkham City much was a problem for a lot of players too, and I do remember that clouding my perspective from when I first played it back in 2013. Revisiting it now with fresh eyes though, I still think it stands on its own, and I stand by my score. So at this point, you may be wondering what Rocksteady and WB Montreal have done since this game and where they are now. Rocksteady of course finished their Arkham series in 2015 with the release of Batman Arkham Knight, a game I'd like to cover eventually as well. They technically continued it another game further though with the release of Arkham VR in 2016, which I tried and thought was pretty cool too. Since then they haven't released anything, but they are due to release their next game soon, which will be Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. As far as WB Montreal, they haven't released any new games since Arkham Origins, but they did work on some DLC packs for Arkham Knight. Other than that, it seems they've been hard at work at developing another DC game, Gotham Knights, focusing on the other members of the Bat family besides Batman. At the time of this recording, that game hasn't released either, but it's one that I'm curious to check out, especially with how much I loved Arkham Origins. But that's all that I have for this video. If you're wondering what to expect next, we'll continue with this continuity and discuss Batman Arkham Asylum, the first Rocksteady Batman title. So I'll be working on that next, but in the meantime, I have plenty of other comic book game retrospectives that you can check out, like the Spider-Man movie games, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and The Punisher. If there are other games you'd like to see covered in the future, definitely let me know, since it helps me to figure out what games to prioritize over others. I've also tried to compile a list of the different comics that were discussed throughout the video in the description below, in case you'd like to check them out for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, since that helps it to reach new viewers, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe for more retrospectives. I've been mainly focusing on Marvel, but I am hoping to incorporate more DC games into the mix as well. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.